Can I get a follow-up here? Like, why is it that you recognize the logic that when the state intervenes on behalf of your own moral preferences, that it is better because of the unintended consequences and of the other issues that may or may not be present, that instead we use cultural enforcement, that we try and bring our community together, and we try and convince people to act voluntarily so that we can create a better society. But you do not apply this logic to the majority of state action within our governance. Like, why is marriage special and everything else we can be like, we can have the state like invade our lives in?
Steven Crowder has announced that he is in divorce proceedings with his wife. He has been criticized for bemoaning her ability to independently decide to get a divorce and for comments directed at her that are perceived to be misogynistic. Furthermore, a video leaked shows him berating his spouse for not performing quote-unquote wifely duties. Steven Crowder has been incredibly influential in the Red Pill community. Is his behavior the ultimate example of why this ideology is a dead end? Does it show that MRA desire for more rights for husbands is simply a cover for controlling women? Is this the inevitable outcome of the modern anti-feminist movement that sprung up in the digital age? So I'm imagining most of you out there in the audience are aware of this. But yeah, Steven Crowder announced his divorce. That divorce announcement is very interesting. He's doing it. I mean, he wants to protect the kids. It's very important, guys. In case you didn't know, he's doing it to protect the kids. And then there's this separate video that doesn't look great, right? Like, as a person who has been taken out of context, in relation to women, I don't want to jump on a bandwagon when I don't know the full context, but man, I don't look great. I don't look great. So I want you guys to explore this topic in terms of like, if everything is as it seems in face value, right? Assuming that, because we obviously have very limited information, but looking at it from face value, is this the inevitable outcome of the people who follow that sort of ideology, the red pill ideology? All right, sorry for our friend Lactoid.
Yeah, so I agree with the responsible take that the video does not show anything near enough to categorize Steven Crowder as an abuser or even a dick. Although I disagree with marriage being a legal institution generally, I don't think it's actually that horrific of an opinion to want to remove no-fault divorce. It is a contract, arguably one of the most important contracts of your life, and currently in the US, we treat it as an absolute joke. 50% of all marriages end in divorce, despite the fact that you are apparently promising yourself for life. There is nothing wrong with assuming that your partner fulfilled duties they have agreed to, whether it be wifely duties, husbandly duties, or non-binary duties. None of the definitive evidence indicates that Steven Crowder is a bad actor, and we can't say that until we see more. It's a 3-minute clip, okay? You take a 3-minute clip from anybody's marriage, you can make anybody look evil, all right? That's just the factual reality of the situation. As to the MRA question, MRAs, or men's rights activism here, can be done 2 ways. There's the incel crowd, which I call sexual communists, who use the MRA movement as a vehicle to complain about the fact that, women won't give them sex. Then I think there are real MRAs. So I think an example of this would be Jordan Peterson from a few years ago, that focus on issues affecting men, and they try to boost men's self-respect and confidence by educating them on the fact that they don't need women to have value, but that they themselves can accomplish their own goals to achieve value. I don't find anything wrong with that as long as it's done the correct way. So there is really nothing wrong at all with responsible MRA and anti-feminist content. It's just the incel infiltrators that are damaging the movement.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to friend Scott.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo much of the same sentiment as Lactoid here. I tried to understand from what was publicly available the context going on, which is that Steven Crowder, is getting his affirming elective surgery, right? Or he's actually in pain right? Then there's also the fact that his wife has GBS, which is like, you should be treating her much better, right? And
What's
the
GPS?
more
I don't know what that is. Could you tell us?
it's like Garel,
Oh, yeah.
syndrome?
it's
Getting
yeah.
bitchy
Sorry, I
syndrome.
can. Would you say?
Julian Barr syndrome.
I apologize.
Yes,
A little bit
Julian
So
Barr syndrome.
she's particularly vulnerable, and like the dog medication thing seems weird here. There's so many variables. The problem is exactly as described. You have a 3-minute out of context video released by one party against another party, right? And people tend to release things that make them look good. And sometimes they even know that they're being recorded. So they might say things that they know will trigger him. Maybe when she said, you know, you're being an abuser, that has been like a trigger for him in the past. And she intentionally said it to try and get him to be like, fucking watch it, which makes him look like this controlling, abusive dick. And then there's this situation with like, who's picking her up? There's so much here and that it could be. I don't really know that I can have an opinion about it. It doesn't look good. I'll be honest, right? It doesn't look good. But again, you can kind of do that out of anyone's marriage that's falling apart. Because obviously their marriage is falling apart because a month later, he's filing for divorce, according to her. So I don't know how I feel about that situation specifically. In terms of the red pill, what the fuck does Steven Crowder have to do with red pill? Steven Crowder's never been a red pillar. He's never been an MRA person. He's never been representative of any of the spheres of that ideology. This is literally just leftists going, isn't red pill right wing, all right wing same? Right, this right wing guy bad? Proof, right wing red pill bad. It's hilarious because red pillars are like the incel community, or they're people that get on that they're pickup artists, or they're gym bros. There's very few red pill tradcons that are Christian. And of those, that's an overlap, not a one-to-one situation. They just both happen to be right wing. So your argument is against traditional conservatism and religious conservatism, not the red pill community. And if you feel that you have issues with that, yeah, I do think that there is some outdated things within that culture in terms of the way a woman should be. But I also think that that's a misinterpretation of history and the role of women. Together, they're supposed to work together. And there's like a thing, there's a lot there that I think we could pick apart as the panel goes on. But yeah, he has nothing to do with red pill. And it's an out of context video. It's silly.
I disagree with that one part, but we can looking into it later on. Let's go from Bam.
Dang, I'm glad to see y'all also watch Destiny. Like that's all I heard. I was like, oh, okay, they watch Destiny because it was like a regurgitation of his.
I had to take first.
I do not fucking watch Destiny, for the record.
Sure. I like, as far as like someone being in a pretty long-term relationship myself, I agree with the fact of not being able to make a judgment call on the totality of the relationship, and who was abusive and who was in wrong, even though like I would lean towards it probably being him based off of other things he said and how his views on marriage generally, but I can't prove that. Is what I will say is, I think from that moment, I think that he is, by his definition, I think failing on what a father, like traditional like man would look like in these relationships. Like I said, I don't think there's anything bad with like the idea of like splitting up labor and what men do, what women do. But I think that Steven Crowder himself, like if this situation didn't happen to him, I think he would, if you describe this situation to him, I think he would describe it as like a failure of a man who's like sitting down while like he's supposed to be protecting his children, protecting his pregnant wife. It just seems like a failure of everything that he advocates to live up to, which I think there's something worthy to talk about there. As far as as far as the
Since the day you were born, baby, black and beautiful.
You're right about that. Came out from the womb to the tomb. As far as like the stuff related to like the red pill, I mean, he has had content relating to the concept of red pill. It's not like this modern. I mean, it's all part of like, I guess it's like the baby that turned into what modern red pill stuff is. But like I think he has like 4 or 5 videos, like even from a quick Google search related to YouTube search related to his account, talking about like, oh, Steven Crowder red pills, such and such. Like, so I think he's at least related to that movement and the concept of
That's
men
a
rights,
totally
women's rights. He talks
separate
about
thing.
things like about family courts and things related to the channel. And I think there's a lot of
Overlap.
good nature, like a lot of good intention from those conversations, but unfortunately it seems like from everything I've seen, the like research actually points to the opposite of a lot of the things the men right advocates like say when you look at the data, because I've even had to move my position on those things, but we'll keep going.
Jazzy.
So these are the things that I know. When that video leaked, everybody who had any political incentive to say anything ever tried to interpret the video to back up their side. If you're a feminist, look at what a fucking asshole he's being. I can't believe he's treating his wife this way. If you're a men's rights activist, it's I can't believe that she's making him go through this when he's so close to his surgery. Like, is there any consideration? There is literally not a single conclusion you can draw from that. Everybody who knows me knows me to be a very passive guy, but I have literally screamed at my ex-wife in a parking lot because she's a fucking alcoholic and she was doing insane things. But if you clipped me doing that, you would be like, this is the most abusive piece of shit I've ever seen in my entire life. You don't know what led up to that. Nobody does. Before anybody tries to say anything about the video being edited, there's zero evidence of this video being edited. I watched it like 14 times, tracking all the time and everything. That's how Ring cameras are. It's pretty normal. The other insane thing I keep hearing about the dog medicine, my wife has been working in healthcare for animals, specifically dogs, for about 7 years. And I confirmed with her, the only thing a pregnant woman can't handle would be like anesthetic. She's not giving anesthetic to the dogs. If she has, I mean, there are medicines, but if you're wearing gloves, you are fine. There is no reason why any woman wearing gloves can't do anything involving dogs' medications. It just seems like they had a spat and people are losing their fucking minds. And anybody who can latch onto it is going to, because he's a big figure. He doesn't have to be red-pilled for you to point to. Like, red-pilled and conservatives have a lot of overlap in their memberships. So it's really, really easy for people to take it and use it. I think the best thing that we can draw from this is figuring out who are the people that are bad actors that are going to try to take any piece of information to spin it to their advantage, and keep that in mind when you talk to them in the future, that they're just trying to take advantage of any piece of information. They don't really care about the shit that they're talking about.
Okay. Corey.
First of all, I guess I should say sorry for Steven Crowder, as he is Canadian. There are good Canadians like Lactoid, and there are bad Canadians like Steven Crowder. So sorry about that. And I overall agree that you certainly cannot 100% conclusively, make conclusions based off of this, 3-minute-ish video. And I'm certainly not a mental health professional in any capacity whatsoever. But I have actually read the clinical handbook of couple therapy. And depending on the modality, like most approaches to couple therapy, like one of the first things that they want to observe is like how couples fight, and like how they pretty much attempt to resolve conflict. And if that's an example of a conflict, I would say it definitely does not look good for Steven Crowder. And I think people are kind of like understandably, latching onto certain things. What I would say, what latches out to me, or what stands out to me, in terms of like, why it doesn't look good from my end, for Steven Crowder, is because he says something specific at one point. I think he says at one point specifically, like, become worthy, or become a wife worthy. I think that type of phrasing. And he also explicitly says, I don't love you, or like, I have never loved you, or something to that effect. I think that that type of language, and sort of like questioning your own partner's self-worth, or trying to make them feel less than, is generally not really a good sign. Pretty symptomatic and problematic, but I would overall agree you can't, it's not fully conclusive. And I'll end with, I think this kind of relates to what I brought up on last week's panel when we were talking about the height lengthening surgery, and that I would say there's a crisis of insecurity among men. And I also think this encapsulates the red pill movement, and encapsulates people like Steven Crowder and many other men that it's not just exclusive to the right or the red pill movement, but I think these are a lot of the symptoms that are coming from this crisis of masculinity. And I will leave it out, the crisis of insecurity among men. I'll leave it there for now.
Would you say it impacts many men?
I would say the vast majority. I would argue that probably in the red pill movement, like the vast majority, if not all of them, basically insecure. But most people will not even recognize or admit to being insecure.
I'm sorry, that was just a 50 Cent joke.
Yeah, I know exactly what I was thinking. Oh, great, we got that.
You're making a 50-cent joke to me?
choose your audience. Let's go to our friend Connor.
Nah, I'm with kidology on this. I think you can call a fucking spade a spade. You know, obviously we all, or at least half of the men here, have admitted to having gamer moments with their significant others, which I think is fine. You know, you obviously use profanity that you shouldn't have. You maybe do an emotional barb that you shouldn't. You get a little bit heated. You talk some shit, etc., etc. But what I saw was basically a child throwing a fucking tantrum while trying to be authoritative with his partner. And I think that it plays into the ideology of like conservative Americans, where you're trying to be authoritative over your wife rather than having a partnership with your wife, where you're building, like, they have strengths, you have strengths, you move back and forth, you negotiate, and you try to, throw up each other's weaknesses. Also, what I would say is Owen Benjamin has this great fucking quote where he basically says, like, pussies and cowards like date women after women after women after women looking for the perfect woman. It takes a special kind of bravery to look a single woman in the eyes and know that she's completely fucking insane and dedicate your life to her. And I agree with that full-throatedly. So if you're a guy, you have an 8-month pregnant woman who doesn't want to stick medicine up a dog's ass, guess what? That's your job. She doesn't want to put on gloves because she's worried that her twins, after a miscarriage that she suffered the year before, she's worried that she's going to get, aspirin on her hands and it's going to cause a miscarriage. Guess what? It's your job to stick fucking medicine up the dog's ass. Basically, the truth is that being in a relationship is sacrificing for another partner. And obviously, you have to negotiate the lines at which you sacrifice. And maybe Steven Crowder got a raw deal where she just wants to be pretty and pump out fucking kids. But guess what? He's a multi-fucking millionaire. I don't know why he can't get a second fucking car and pay a goddamn maid to do his wife's bullshit if she's really that big of a fucking pain in the ass. But we'll, and I'm pretty sure that all of this stuff that I'm talking about could have been negotiated in a different way than what we saw in that video. So I'll be judgmental. I'll just do 2 + 2 = 4. And finally, how this associates to the men's rights activist movement. I feel like what I saw in those 3 minutes is the perfect example of what a MRA person or a red pill person or a tradcon person thinks a relationship should be, where you're trying to influence or assert authority over another human being so they can act the way that you want them to act. But I don't think that's how it works in a liberal or, our society. I think that basically women have the right to tell you to go fuck yourself, and it actually becomes a partnership and a negotiation between 2 consenting adults where the lines in the relationship are. So if you ever feel like telling your wife or partner, we are at an impasse unless we get some dignity and respect.
Discipline
And respect. If you feel like you want to use that line, I think it's a fucking loser. You might want to rethink your rhetoric, and I'll leave it at that.
Joe Lewis.
Oh boy. I think it's very interesting that you have a woman who married this man in Steven Crowder, and I guess didn't think that she would receive the same smoke that he does in his public life as a commentator. Like, this is a man who has built an entire brand on talking tough and being conservative. And it feels like to me that she thought that he wouldn't do the same shit to her just because they're married. And I know that might be a hard pill for some people to swallow, but it shouldn't surprise you that the man who built this entire platform and talking tough and not taking shit and like puffing up his chest, like puffed up his chest in front of his wife, his pregnant wife, as a fact of that matter. And on top of that, like when you have a relationship that appears to be built on certain familial duties and your spouse does not or is not articulating those duties or doing those duties, how do you think they're going to react? And that's something that you should probably interrogate before you enter this deep into a relationship. And so, like, in a lot of ways, I want to, and we're probably not ready for it yet because I understand how people might feel, but we have to interrogate women who get married to cozy losers. And I'd love, maybe we could talk about that today, like a culture of marriage that says that you can marry a loser, and when the going gets tough, you divorce him. And like, but like for me, generally, like as much as I think that like Steven Crowder is again a person who puffs his chest and talks conservative, like why are we surprised that he talks this way to his partner? I don't think that was articulated here, but it's like water's wet to me. And furthermore, I think like men's rights activists in the manosphere get something correct insofar as we don't hold women accountable for shit, because we have a culture of marriage, we have a culture of patriarchy that says that women are allowed to be irresponsible and unaccountable, no different than men are allowed to be irresponsible and unaccountable. But the difference is when women are irresponsible and unaccountable, we blame them instead of blaming the men. So
subscribe to the Rumble and you can get helicopter
we gotta,
emojis.
Like, have a better
Emotes.
culture of marriage,
Animated ones,
and a better
boys.
culture of divorce. And maybe we're ready to have that conversation if we see the consequences of not having a good culture of marriage and divorce in the Crowders. But it's complicated and messy, and it's going to be required looking at women objectively and thinking like, how do we create a culture of marriage and a culture of divorce that makes sure that women don't get married to losers like Steven Crowder?
Doobie.
I actually agree with everything Counterpoint said. I don't think there's any context that could justify speaking to your wife like that, especially not your 8-month pregnant wife. So all these people saying, oh, well, it's 3 minutes out of context, maybe there's some way that she was doing this to piss him off. I think that's kind of ridiculous. Now, personally, I've never screamed at a partner before. I've never spoken down to a partner like that before. I think that if you're a grown adult, right, you're upset about something, it's best to just walk away, let everybody cool off, and then you address the situation afterwards. That's my way of doing things. So this kind of like tantrum that he was throwing, I think is fucking embarrassing, right? If I were him, I would be humiliated, and I would refuse to show my face anywhere ever again on any public platform, ever, because he should be embarrassed. So I don't know. I think this kind of like, and I think that Counter kind of said exactly, pulled the words out of my mouth, and he said that if you're like the big, strong, authoritative, conservative man, and you need to say, oh, we're not going to move forward, or we're at an impasse unless you have discipline and respect or whatever the fuck. If you need to say that, right, there is no discipline or respect in that relationship, right? It's probably just better to just end the relationship and move on. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's disgusting. I think it's obviously abusive, and yeah, I think that's close case from.
Open to the panel.
I think being which I mean, I'm sure there's other people who have been in like pretty long-term relationships. I think that like it's real nice to say like, oh, I would never be frustrated with a partner, while they're pregnant.
That's not what I said.
No, did I say?
He said that he personally hasn't cussed out his partner, which, by the way, I called him a pussy for saying that he never cussed out his partner. So.
I mean, I
just don't do that.
Can we all just call bullshit on that? Like you're so full of shit. You've never been in a long-term committed relationship.
Some people have emotional
never
control.
In your entire life.
Maybe you never met my
fucking
wife.
lost it.
I've been a very
I
easy
would
person to
love
get
hear
along
what
with.
Bam was trying to say.
I was about to say, I won't even I didn't even push back against that. I've never cussed out my partner. But that's just because I don't know. I just don't do it. I don't know. Got yelling arguments, but like I date black women, and a B
Well, they're
word comes
racist,
out
but
and
okay.
like you might actually die. It's the same thing.
Yeah, black woman
It's-
bad. Wouldn't say.
It's different.
I've had that experience, and let me tell you, it is less fun as a white guy when you let it slip.
Ooh.
But no, but like generally, like I think that there's like, I don't think like the idea of like, oh, okay, we're gonna go through a pregnancy and like when she's in that moment, I'm gonna be, it's whatever you need, baby. Just let me know. I'm here. Yep. Like it sounds good, and you're gonna make an effort to do it, but
True.
like everyone's gonna have points with like, oh my god, like I've done this, I've done like 37 things, and like she's coming at me about this one thing,
Okay.
or if I asked her to do this one, like relationships are tough, and that doesn't, again, that's not just
Yeah, you can be annoyed
Okay.
about it. Just man the fuck up and do it.
Hold up. No, I want to give a concession to the other side though, because the negotiations of household chores and responsibilities or whatever is huge, and there's still the possibility that Mrs. Crowder or whatever, or Mrs. Former Crowder, literally did nothing. Okay, there's a possibility. There's some women who just like they marry people. They want to be catered on. They're daddy's little princess. They want you to do the same thing, and as a result, like you give them two responsibilities, and they avoid those responsibilities. That is completely possible. And if that's Steven's narrative, I would understand. Like I would understand it. But guess what? If your wife is a fucking princess and you're a multi-millionaire, then he's right. You chose wrong. He was right about that. You chose fucking wrong if you married a fucking princess and you're a multi-millionaire and you want her to fucking
this is so
stick dogs on
stupid.
her ass.
This is so silly. Like you and I counterpoints
Sure.
are probably the only two people here who have been in a relationship with a pregnant. Is there anybody else here who's been in a relationship? Okay, so 3 people.
Oh, no,
So listen,
I got 5 lists.
the dynamic clearly changes during that, and it's stressful as fuck, right? Like what that person was able to do, how they acted towards you, how the relationship was, how much sex you're having. All of those things change a little bit. Not for everybody. Some things change more than others. But the idea, like when you're like, oh, well, you married this person, yada, yada, yada. It is perfectly conceivable that you had someone before the pregnancy and before these issues where things were hunky-dory. And then whilst pregnant with 2 twins during the lockdowns right before your surgery, shit got a little wild. Sorry, am I breaking up audio-wise?
Tell me you didn't just say. I was about to say. Tell me you didn't just say the Owen Benjamin quote back to me.
I don't.
Every woman's
I
fucking
hate that
crazy. You
quote.
gotta look them into the fucking eyes and ride that shit out.
Joe Lewis.
I don't buy it. Like, look, you should probably articulate these type of things before you're put into the pressure cooker like that. And it's very clear that Crowder, it didn't matter to him. So it's like he didn't really articulate what wifely duties mean, and they had an agreement of wifely duties. You don't just throw that out there randomly. And he married someone who didn't want to deliver.
But there's enough evidence here.
He picked wrong. That's my point. My point is that he picked wrong.
And I agree with you. But what I'm saying is, you don't want to perform wifely duties or whatever, and then he talks about how he's willing to do the grocery shopping or whatever. So very clearly that would fall under her responsibility. When it came to the dogs or whatever, he felt like it was reasonable that she would walk the dogs and give them medication, and if she was uncomfortable about the medicine, she would put gloves on. That was the other thing. There was a third responsibility. I forget what it was, but maybe I'm just thinking about the cars. But the car thing is weird to me. It's just like genuinely fucking weird. How do you have millions of dollars in the fucking bank and you're down to one fucking car? And then no,
Lacto cares about the environment. Huge environmentalist.
Yeah, huge environmentalist. Or alternatively, it's like I'm thinking of that like Dave Ramsey or whatever that guy is, where like he's obsessed with like not drinking Starbucks so you can save fucking money or some shit. But then, like, if your wife's being a fucking pain in the ass on the fucking back end and you're a multimillionaire and you're paying the logistical consequences of that, that is, again, a self-imposed fucking consequence. What are you doing?
Their backyard also wasn't hitting on nothing.
Like,
Lactroid's fucking losing it. I want to see why he's fucking losing it.
No, I mean, like...
So, I mean, I've heard this a couple times. I've actually had this discussion before. This idea of, like, well, one fucking car. So, in the video... he tells her to Uber, right? So they have other forms of transportation,
which is not reasonable.
Not reasonable to Uber?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put my pregnant wife with my fucking children, the two most important things in my fucking life, in a fucking cab with somebody with a fucking GED education. Fuck you. Like no.
Hello,
She's
Justin.
going to the grocery store. What? Are we gonna like build like a bubble around her?
Why
Like,
couldn't
send
he
armed
take the
guards?
Uber?
I'm gonna get
No,
yeah,
this
you
is
know what I'm
so
gonna
important.
do?
Why
Is
couldn't
fucking
he take the
ridiculous.
Uber?
I'm gonna rent her a
absolutely.
fucking
So
car.
there are
That's
plenty
what
of
I'm gonna
there are
do.
plenty of reasons why. There are plenty of reasons why maybe I think he even said like he wanted to have availability of the car there. I don't know how true this
Why couldn't
is.
they rent a car?
So if I'm wrong on this, apparently they own multiple homes and there were cars at the other homes. Maybe they just had one car at that home at the time, right? He is rich as fuck. And the other element is like they have one car. Let's say they do have one car. So fucking what? They have one car. It's like a little bit of a logistical challenge. They have incurred this logistical challenge.
You figure it out.
And if she has an
Let
Uber,
me
if she has the
posit
ability to
something.
Uber,
Then
if
you
she has
don't,
the ability
like,
to
Oh,
Uber,
we're
when I
not
look
like
at
this,
this,
this
when
is
I,
just like a
then
bizarre
you don't.
fucking not only is this
Then-
like this is just a bizarre concept. A,
Then-
B, this concept of well, you chose wrong. Like you should,
Yes.
you should just fucking focus and make the crazy woman super happy or whatever Benjamin quote.
Rude.
And that's just I
Use-
think ridiculous and something that we would never tell women. Like, oh, he's crazy, just stay with. No, people
I
leave
tell
his
my
ass,
wife
right?
that
That's what
every
people
day.
say.
right?
No,
If
I
he's
tell my
scaring
wife
you,
that every
leave
day.
his
Unless
ass.
you-
And
unless
people
there's a
say that.
threat.
I think it's perfectly fair to tell that to young men too. Where if she's crazy, if you don't like the way she's treating you, you can leave her.
You stay.
But the element here that I think is like just mind blowing is what you guys are saying about well, you guys should have hashed out how you would behave at your worst beforehand.
Yes.
That's just not how relationships work. It's
Well,
crazy.
maybe if you don't- maybe if you're
let's say
unserious
let's
about
say like
marrying,
5 years from now, there's a
like-
global pandemic and you're pregnant with my twins, and there's like I might have to get surgery, which by the way wasn't cosmetic surgery. It was
Mhm.
actually because his heart was functioning at half capacity.
Yep.
Right. But like maybe all this shit's gonna happen.
Yeah.
If this happens, how are we gonna behave? How are we gonna overcome our differences if all these things come together? No, that's not the way reality works.
Hey,
Shit comes
Lactoid,
up.
That's the way
Lactoid,
shit
it
why do you
happens.
think?
works. I mean,
Lactoid,
Lactoid,
why wouldn't it have been more
I wanna be-
simply.
I want to be
Explain.
right.
car?
Simple
Okay, Lactoid. I
perspective.
want to be very specific, if
I'm
I
not gonna
can.
talk the
If-
entire panel. I got it.
Yeah, sorry. I'm invoking my
cool.
white privilege. So, okay, Lactoid, real quick. So, I think every person who has been in a significant relationship on this panel, including Joe and including me, I've said some wild shit to my wife, and my wife has said some wild shit to me. That is not what I'm fucking judging here. What I am judging is him trying to assert himself as a hyper masculine figure who needs discipline and respect from his wife when there are very clear like logistical solutions to the fucking situation, and he's being a fucking stick in the mud and he's being a fucking dick when there's obviously solutions right fucking there. And on top of that, if you come, here's the thing. If you came at me and you said, this is a TV camera of somebody who works 70 hours a week making $8 an hour, he can't afford his fucking bills and he can barely take care of his fucking wife, I would happily concede, like, these are the stresses of the modern working environment. It's a tough world. But if you're a fucking millionaire, why the fuck do you have that many of resources if not to offset the logistical fucking demands of everyday life?
Again, we don't know the specifics of why they were in the position where they were. He's told her she can get an Uber. I know you think that's like crazy that someone would get an Uber to go to the grocery
Yeah, I'm
store.
gonna put my wife in a
that's-
car
You should-
with an illegal
Yeah,
immigrant.
that's crazy.
Are you crazy?
Yeah, no, that's
If you're concerned about her safety,
Okay.
I'm gonna finish.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want to write
Very
that out.
quickly. Then I got to move on.
Sure, I just want to write that out. I think that's just a ridiculous concern. But again, right? So there's all sorts of reasons for the logistical challenges, and there's all sorts of stressors that some stressors we know about, and maybe other stressors we don't know about. And on top of all of that, right? If they like entered into a religious marriage where like this was the idea of like the hierarchy within their marriage, and like consistently this wasn't like being adhered to, does she have the right to leave him? Sure. But is he like an asshole for behaving the way he was? Well, he didn't put his hands on her, right? He didn't like trap her in the fucking house. He was just displaying like how frustrated he was with the fact that she wasn't doing what he was telling her to do. I don't think that's crazy.
Okay. All right. So we got to move on. So look, I'm gonna do something I shouldn't do, right, Corey? I'm sorry. Like I'm gonna like your white privilege should supersede everything else. But Joe Lowe's is black, and he threaten me. So Joe,
Your
I want to
show.
give you a chance. Then we go to Corey, Juby, and Drazi.
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe this is the conservative in me, but when you marry someone, it's a vow. You're agreeing to, no matter what, figure it out. And that's kind of where I'm at. Where barring physical harm or threat of violence, you're in it till one of you dies. And when you go into that agreement, you should take that agreement seriously. You should take that agreement and what happens if we have kids? What happens if I have heart complications? What happens when I'm no longer attractive? What happens if I'm broke? What happens if I'm rich? And you need to walk these through your partner so you know what you're potentially getting into, and constantly and consistently clarifying what that is. A lot of men and a lot of women don't do this. So they walk into the marriage thinking that the marriage is going to be the point that it was at the point that they say I do, and that's not what reality is. Like the external world is going to throw all this shit at you, and you're going to have to figure it out. And that's what
And
you owe
she's
your
divorcing
spouse.
him.
Yeah, that's the culture of divorce. The culture of divorce says when you don't do these things, you're going to get all of it. And that, hey, good for her. But for Steven Crowder, it's a lesson of like, hey, pick better.
You just said you're a conservative that believes marriage should be forever, and then you're like, good for her, get that bag, girl. Like,
take all this shit. Oh my
I did
God.
not
I
say
think
marriage
the
is
you said
forever.
you enter into an agreement and you're with it until one of you dies, but also get that bag, girl, queen.
Let's interrogate this. What did I say? What did I say? I know Connor knows what I said. I'm curious if you know
barring
what I said.
physical abuse, you're in it until one of you dies.
No, wrong.
When you
Try
make
again.
that commitment.
Wrong. That's not what I said.
Can you tell us,
What?
Joe?
What the fuck are you
please?
talking about? What did you say then?
What I said, when you marry someone, that is a vow. It is a vow to figure it out. The only justifiable reason that I see for divorce is a threat of violence to yourself or others, or physical harm. Those are the two bars.
You added a signifier, but nevertheless, you're still saying good for her.
Do you agree with that idea? Disagree with that idea?
I absolutely disagree. You literally said he should have chose better.
Yeah, he should have chose better.
Okay, for me, that's a mean callback to his own video, in which the only mistake that he copped to was the fact that he chose the wrong partner. Okay, so it's a half meme for me, because he's basically like apologized or copped to 0% of it, except for he chose the wrong wife, which is his words, not mine.
That's not true. He said that he had said bad things and that he played a role in it as well.
We can interrogate Steven Crowder's content and say, like, is it reasonable to believe that Steven Crowder, the public figure Steven Crowder, who's been a public-facing figure on the internet for over a decade, could potentially treat his partner the same way that he treats the people that he talks about? And I think that's fair to say that he probably does. And we get an example of that. How far is that? Who knows? Maybe the family will drop the entire Ring video for the past 10 years. But this is where we're at.
Let's go to Corey, and then Doobie. Remember whatever you were going to say to Joe, and then Drazi.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot to want to address, but obviously don't have the time to address it all. So I'll try to stick to like one main point, or maybe two. Because yeah, I think from my perspective, a lot of people, I think, to what Joe was saying of like, yeah, he picked wrong, or saying he picked wrong, and also to what Connor, I think, brought up in terms of like, in kind of like a worst case scenario, the wife could have been just like super lazy, a princess that literally did nothing. Like even if Steven Crowder did pick wrong, even if like they just like sat around and literally did nothing, I don't know how that justifies like anything that occurred in the video. Of like, yeah, you can still like, as in, just because let's say the wife was some sort of bad actor, barring whatever physical violence, I don't see how that can justify anything that's observed like in the video. I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of intimate partner violence is like reciprocal. And there's a whole spectrum of intimate partner violence where it's like, well, okay, if I'm shoved, well, then I'm justified in shoving them. But like, just because you are shoved, it doesn't mean you are justified in shoving them back. Or if you're hit, barring self-defense. But this is also one of the reasons why like intimate partner violence is very frequently reciprocal. So like, yeah, I don't see how any of the points that have been brought up like justifies anything that Steven Crowder did in the video. And lastly, to address something that Lactoid brought up, when it comes to like, so I would agree with you. You can't like map out every single step of your lifetime marriage. But there is a concept. I mean, there's multiple reasons why I've read the clinical handbook of couple therapies, because like you can have a pretty good, maybe not perfect, but good understanding of how you resolve conflict in a relationship. And conflict resolution like is a thing. There's a healthy way to go about it, and there are many unhealthy ways to go about it. And how you resolve conflict is something you should know when you step into any long-term relationship or marriage. And I would argue that the vast majority of people don't know how to resolve conflict in a healthy way.
Okay, Corey.
Okay,
As far
let's
as
go.
the difference between, I was just
Why-
gonna engage with what he said.
Yeah, you
Okay,
can
go ahead.
Sam.
Do it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think I think there's a difference between justification and some level of empathizing. Like, there there's no justifiable reason to ever have like a toxic argument, like where you say like really rude things to your partner. It's not justified, but I think human beings that have been in places similar, if not there, can can have some level of understanding. Like, oh, okay, you like they're in it right now. They're late in this pregnancy. She's probably not sleeping well, which he's probably not sleeping well. Like everything, like you can understand what leads people to the position that they got to without saying that it's justified.
Okay, I want to respond to this directly.
Yeah.
So I just want y'all to hear me when I say this. I do not give a flying fuck about him saying some wild shit. People say wild shit. Okay. What I care about is the fact that he's trying to do this like big dog, I'm the alpha male, you need to do what
Yeah.
I want you to do, while also whining like a fucking child while having logistical solutions to the problems. So for instance, he's like, tell me what you want. I'll go to the grocery store. I'll get you whatever. Oh, wait. We don't have any grocery shopping today. And his response is like, I need my steakums and my wood pellets. Like Jesus fucking Christ. You're on the verge of arguing so hard that your fucking wife is about to walk out the fucking door because you're pissing her off so much. And you're fucking whining about your steakums and your fucking wood pellets. Like, get the fuck
Well,
out of here.
and Connor, like a thing for me too is that that's a part of this is recognizing the field of play, where it's like if you don't figure this out and you don't do this as a matter of agreeing upon a vow, a covenant, she will leave you. And do you want that for your future children? Do you want that for your current children? And you need to assess that, at least in my opinion, when you're in these sort of petty conflicts where it's like, is this exchange right now worth her taking half, if not everything? And if you think that's the way to go, play ball.
Well, so I wanna ask something because Lactoid and Scott keep kind of rolling their eyes whenever I fucking say what I'm saying. So for instance, like I just want to hear you kind of say this. Like, do you think that it's reasonable for a multimillionaire, if he needs steaks, that he could use a fucking delivery service like most of us have done in major cities across the entire fucking country during COVID?
To clarify, Connor,
Would
did
I-
you really say steak?
No, he said something about beef or his meat
okay.
or something.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
I
it was
mean,
steak. It was
same
steak
difference.
with
I
pellets
think he
for
like
his
wanted to
grill.
barbecue.
He
or
wanted
something.
it. He wanted to grill or something.
Right.
What it looks like to me, because none of us fucking know, and everyone is pretending to like no context makes this acceptable. Whatever. What it looks like to me is that there was an argument before this argument, and he went
Of course.
outside to go smoke a cigar, and the argument was the fact that she gets like that she's not doing any of the shit that she said that she would do, and that he's like, look, I get you're fucking pregnant, but like I got shit too. I'm the one that's busy doing all this stuff. Now, could he get a car? Sure, but not in the middle of this fucking argument. He can't. And so what I see is someone that is like, I know exactly, I don't know this, right? I'm just kind of hypothesizing, right? But when I see the video, first of all, it looks disgusting. It hurts me to see a pregnant woman treated that way. It actually physically hurts me as someone that's been in situations, but I also understand how messy divorces are because this is in the middle of a divorce, basically. This is right at the end when shit is the worst. And what it looks like to me is he's like, this bitch in his head, right? He's like, this bitch, I know exactly what she's going to do. She's going to take the fucking car. She's going to take her sweet ass time. She's like not being specific about where she's actually going to go. She's going to fuck off for 3 hours. I'm going to be left alone here. And we have an unresolved argument. And he's flexing his shit to be like, no, we're at a fucking impasse. Like, this is a fucking problem. I don't want you disappearing for 3 hours while I'm sitting here with nothing to fucking do, stranded. And you're going to go gallivant and fuck off because you say you need space. but like we've tried space, we've tried counseling, we've tried this. Like it's time to fucking fix this. And then he flexes some alpha male bullshit, whatever, because he's at the end of his fucking rope. And yeah, is he being a bitch about it? Sure, but that's what it looks like to me. And I don't know if that's reasonable or not reasonable. I don't know if that's right or wrong.
I'm okay as
It
long
looks
as you
fucked up.
admit that he looked like he was being like a fucking bitch about it. I will concede that I do not know all of the logistical factors that I am.
I'll give you
twisting
this.
The knife on. If you admit that he was being kind of fucking whiny in that conversation.
Yeah,
He's being a
absolutely.
kid.
I'll give you this. I'll give you this. My mother and stepfather, right, went through a terrible divorce. And this was after like 27 years, right? My stepfather was basically my dad from when I was a little kid. And it took me a long time, and my mother took a long time, to realize that he was a narcissistic abuser and that I was living with someone with covert vulnerable NPD that would manipulate my mother into beating me just so that he could be the hero that saved me from the beating so that his own narcissistic supply would be fed by that. Like it was not a good situation. And even still, he, you know, and maybe this is a fault of my own or whatever. He basically stole one of my vehicles, but it was at his house, right? And he sold it in the middle of this really, really messy divorce. And I remember calling him and being like, shit happens in divorce. I fucking get it. I've seen both you and my mother act insane. Like, I'm not mad about $500. I want my stepdad back. And like, I've seen these things plenty of times. And he's gone. Fuck him. But, you know, 27 years and he's like, whatever, I can't get narcissistic supply from you. And you know my game, so we're out. But even still, I recognize in that instance that really fucked up shit and really evil shit, people that things that you would never expect to see from yourself comes from those situations. You will do things that right now you'll be like, there's no excuse. I would never do that in a million years. And then you'll find yourself when the person you love the most is telling you they don't love you anymore, and you have children, and those children, you're about to become an every other weekend dad, and like all of the love is gone. Like you will find yourself saying horrible, horrible things that are borderline abusive. And that's why the fucking relationship ends. And when you take a 3-minute fucking snippet of that and then you post it online, it looks crazy. And it's ridiculous that we're even having a conversation about it.
So I got to move past this. Doobie, Drazzy, Lacto, I think you wanted to engage with this. So we'll go after that. All right, so Doobie, please.
So I disagree with everything Scott just said, but I think that something Joe said earlier was more interesting. You said that you believe that short of violence or the threat of violence, there's no justifiable reason there's no other reason that'd be like justified to break up a marriage, right?
Justifiable reason. Yep.
So, okay, so if she were like, if your wife were cheating on you repeatedly, like you would say that you should just stay with her?
Figure it out. Yep.
Ooh.
Really? Like,
All
what if
hard
she just
disagree
wanted to
on
fuck
that.
other people? Like,
Figure it out.
Yeah, hard disagree.
That's why you get like, listen, if you want, like, again,
I just want to say real quick, he doesn't
No,
want to
yeah, go
engage,
for
so
it.
I'll just take that dub real quick since he says he
yeah,
disagrees,
go
but
ahead
doesn't
and
want to
take
engage.
it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just wanted that on the record.
I didn't know that. I just didn't know that Joe was that like conservative on marriage. That's
No,
strange.
so that actually does happen.
You have an agreement to figure it out.
So if like if your
is not
husband
a
rapes
justifiable
somebody,
reason.
I do not have an
Infidelity is not
agreement.
for me. Infidelity is not a justifiable reason for divorce. I do not pass that on to other people. So if your wife,
if your husband rapes somebody else,
oh my
you
goodness.
divorce
Well,
him?
hold on. What is rape? What is rape? Come on, child.
No,
What is rape?
you said
rape is violence,
it's a form
right?
of violence, but not
So
against the
that's a
wife though, right?
justifiable reason for divorce, then, yeah.
Wait, but not
If
against the
rape is
wife.
violence?
You would just say against anybody, right?
Yeah, if you rape somebody
against
else.
anybody. Rape is
Oh,
violence.
He
That's a
did
justifiable
say
reason for
hurt
divorce.
self and others. He did.
What,
say
what
that.
about
I see,
embezzle?
I
What about
see, okay.
embezzlement? What if like he steals like $30 million? Is that like this?
Figure it out.
Figure that
What if
shit
he's
out.
like? What if he has like child porn? On the
You're
PC
rich
and
now,
he's,
so
like,
you-
jerking
What if
off
he
to children?
What if he
implicates her
pays
in a
taxes?
crime?
I just knew we never
If he pays
engage with the
taxes,
topic. It's like,
he's
I-
oh,
engaging
just
in
I
one
just-
thing.
violence and
I
harm
didn't-
against others.
I'm like shocked. I thought
Anything
Joe
else?
was like a
This is
super
like you being shot
progressive. Like
just
this is
fun
this
for
So
you
why
to
do
get
you?
No,
off
this
so
topic.
why do you
this is
think?
shocking.
So why do you think? Like, I take marriage seriously because I treat it as a vow, and as a vow, you owe it to your spouse to co-determine your domestic life. That's my stance. It's
Do
not
you
that
agree
hard
with
to
Crowder
understand.
to bring it back to the topic?
Hold on, Doobie, I'll explain it. It's that fucking black thing where like they're like hyper progressive,
Black.
but then like
That
super
black
socially
thing?
conservative.
What the
Yep.
fuck?
Okay, and then that makes sense.
Okay.
So to bring it back to Crowder, because one of the things that
Glad I'm on
seemed like he
Rumble
was
right
like,
now.
pointing to bring it back to Crowder, one of the things he seemed like he was pointing to in his like video, right, was that in the current law is that a woman can get divorced, right? You can, someone can just say, hey, I want to dissolve my marriage, and it can happen. Do you agree with him then that that shouldn't be the case? That we should have more restrictions on divorce
And
legally?
counseling.
Joe,
What? What's the question?
Should we have
do you agree?
mandated counseling before divorce?
That's not what that was not what the question was. So
That's what I'm
so in Crowder's video, it seemed like he was implying that he disagreed with the current law, right? That where a woman can or anybody can say, "Hey, I want a divorce," and then the marriage is dissolved.
Yeah, we should
Like no
probably
fault
restructure divorce.
Okay, so you believe that there should be like some kind of legal requirement that has to be met, right? There has to be like either from your perspective, there would need to be like physical violence somewhere, or the threat of physical violence for the state to say that it's illegal for this divorce to happen.
I think the fight is more towards changing the culture of marriage than it is actually legally changing divorce.
Yeah, but if you could do
How
that,
libertarian of you.
make that a law?
I said what I said. Do you want me to say it
I
again?
understand you said what you said, but it seems like
I
I'm just
think
wondering
I
if you
think
agree
the
with
better
Crowder.
fight. I think the better fight is to.
I'm not asking what's more pragmatic. I'm asking what you agree
I
with.
think the better fight to be had is to change the culture of divorce and marriage. The way you do that is by changing the culture of marriage. You could probably do that and leave divorce untouched. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah,
It's
but
gonna
hold
be
on,
it's a longer fight.
I'm gonna have to press you on this, my man Joe.
Okay,
Right? Like
I'm ready.
Doobie's asking a really reasonable question. Like
I'm not
the idea
gonna
of
legally
changing
change.
the
I'm not
the
going to
idea.
legally change divorce. We can recognize the fault. I'm getting a little charged up here, so maybe this is the intent.
Right.
I recognize that currently no false divorce and the culture of divorce and how divorce is currently structured is that a woman can do whatever the fuck she wants and then divorce the nigga. I don't want that. But I don't have the balls to say I want to legally change that because there's a lot of things, there's a lot of violence, and there's a lot of harm that isn't as clear as bruises, right? So I'd rather recognize that, hey, we should probably approach the culture of marriage and treat marriage seriously as an actual vow than it is to create legal parameters that might indirectly hurt women. That's my stance.
Now do this with everything else, and you'll be a libertarian.
If that's difficult, fuck off, because I'm not engaging any further from it.
All right,
That's my stance, and if you don't understand it,
okay,
do this with other things
I understand
people
it. I
are
just think
forced to do.
But whatever, it's fine.
Let's go to Drazi
and
then Lactoid.
All right, a bunch of people said a lot of really crazy shit, so I'm just gonna try to rattle off my responses to them. Like starting with the least contentious. Uber is twice as safe as regular civilian driving, so you should be compelled to make your pregnant wife take an Uber. Literally 2 times as safe as a regular driver. If there's an imperative here, she must take an Uber. The next one is there's no consideration for what his values are. He's a Christian man, so it seems like he's going to have a lot of values that it seems like a lot of people on this panel here, including myself, aren't going to share. So the things that he's going to get upset about and the way he's going to react to them would be completely different. The idea that marriage has the same internal meaning to people and should have the same internal meaning to everybody is dogmatic and fucking insane. There is one thing that all marriages in the U.S. have in common, and it's the piece of paper they have to sign and the fee they have to pay to the government. That's it. If you're a Christian, it means one thing. If you're a Wiccan, it means another thing. If you're a Muslim, it means another thing. We should not all have the same shared value for what a marriage should and should not be. That's fucking crazy. And to suggest that we need to change the culture of marriage suggests that there is a singular culture of marriage that everybody should be abiding by. I just can't back up that kind of dogmatism, and I'd be really surprised if you would support this kind of dogmatism in any other kind of social structure.
I said what I said. You want me to say it again, Elder, or do you want to?
Nah.
I didn't say. Not one part of what I said implies that I'm confused about what you said. I'm saying that I think that it's short-sighted and awful.
I said that we should have a culture of marriage that advocates and prioritize. It's not get wrecked.
There is a culture of marriage that does this. This is fundamental Christian marriage.
You talked. Am I going to talk? What's the road here?
Well, I don't know. You interrupted me, so I guess that's we're both trying to talk.
Let's establish what the road is. What's the road? Your call. Your choice. What do you want to do? How do you want to engage?
I guess I don't mind hearing your response, but you're implying that I said I don't understand what you're saying. You can say it again, but I understand what you're saying. I just have a problem with it.
All right. What would you like me to do then?
Let
I don't
him
know.
finish.
You jumped in.
I'm asking you what would you like me to do?
If you could wait till I'm just gonna bullet off these things really fast. I'm trying to go fast so that way everybody has a chance to yell at me if they hate what I
Fantastic.
said.
Go ahead.
The idea that you need to vet people before you get married to them is insane. People can change like 180 degrees for any reason. Pregnancy, in my own experience, my kid's mom completely changed after she got pregnant. She was a uncaring, unempathetic person to everybody around her, and I could not stay with her anymore. It was too much of a struggle to try to fight with somebody to get them to be decent to other people in their lives. Not me, other people. So people can just change. There's no amount of vetting that you can do to predict it. Another point is that she could have done and said things prior to that fight that specifically set up because that recording is there. I know, having installed a ton of surveillance cameras, that people are very aware of where their cameras are in their home. Very, very aware. So she could have like not like staged and scripted it, but like very much set up to have some kind of ammunition knowing that the divorce was coming. I think they probably had an idea. And the last one is it seems crazy to me. Somebody else said this too, that this fight was just this fight. It clearly came from other things, and their responses to each other felt almost rehearsed. This is not a new kind of dynamic that they had. They've been going through this for a while. So I even did say that the things that they're saying actually mean the things that they say, rather than it's just sort of like some rhetorical bullshit fight that they're having with each other. I think the words probably have very little like actual definitional meaning in that kind of a fight. Like it's just
not
like
only can we not know what's happening, we can't know what they're actually saying. Is your position? So maybe
yeah,
maybe
not only
she's
do we not
maybe
know,
she's okay. Go ahead.
We do
Yeah.
know.
not only
think
do we
that-
not know what they mean when they say it, but it just seems like if there's anything that I
there's-
can guess from that is it looks like they have done this kind of fight before. They have said these words to each
Oh,
other before.
Okay, so Elder Drazi, I think that you can actually extrapolate a lot of charitable meaning that isn't as like evil and pernicious against Crowder. So for instance, when he says like watch it, that was like the main thing that people were freaking out about as being like hyper aggressive and abusive or whatever. But if you actually go back to like the original part of it's like the first 30 seconds or whatever, he says like we already talked about sick and abusive. So and we talked about that being
Yep.
like a line.
It's like a trigger
So-
that they probably spoke about in therapy before.
Right. So if you want to be charitable to Steven Crowder, you can basically say, like, she, knowingly or unknowingly, maybe she wanted to throw a fucking grenade, maybe she knew the fucking, the camera was there or whatever the fuck. But she basically said, like, your abuse is sick. And then he was like, watch it, because basically he was getting fucking triggered over that shit. I think
Or
that
maybe
you
he's
can
abusive and
be-
doesn't like to be called abusive.
Well, yeah. So I
Also
think you can be,
possible.
like- I think you can be like a good faith interlocutor and like give him as much charity when it comes to that shit as possible, and still point out like the entire dynamic is fucked and almost like a self-inflicted wound that a person who is claiming to be like a masculine conservative who believes in traditional marriage and who wants to be married for the rest of his life and all that kind of shit. And by the way, like you were saying that we shouldn't impose the standard of like multiple, or we shouldn't like unify the expectations of marriage across different cultures that are made up in our liberal society. I agree with that. I think the criticism is coming from the failure to live up to his own set expectations of masculinity and authoritativeness and his own expectations of Christian marriage. Which, by the way,
I agree with
like,
that.
I would view. Sorry, last point, and then I'll shut up. I would view the authoritative women do what I say Christian interpretation of marriage as a complete fucking failure of interpretation of scripture, because
Yeah.
basically they talk specifically about how they become like the two become one flesh, and if a man mistreats his woman the way that he mistreats his own body, it's as if he's committing a fucking sin. Like there's so many interpretations where like being kind and charitable to the other person is a part of that mandate.
If there's anything I know about Christians that make Christianity part of their identity, it means they have heavily filtered it through their own desires. So
Let's go to
Can I play Elder
Lactoid
Drazi
Bam.
now, or is I gonna wait?
Okay.
If
If
you
you need to
wait- if you
okay,
wait-
Lactoid Bam, Corey, and Joe.
Okay.
So, first of all, Elder Drazi, incredible bullet points. I also want to, when you pointed out that like Ubering is twice as safe, I think now you could actually make the opposite argument, counterpoints than you were making, which is that he was simply trying to stop his wife from endangering their children, right? By, hey, you have to take an Uber because, hey, driving's not safe.
You
That's
missed the
not
point,
my-
though.
I
I'm
know.
bigoted against immigrant workers. You missed that.
Yeah,
Also,
fair
your
enough.
Uber
Fair
driver
enough.
is 1 billion times more likely to be a serial killer. So
Hey,
Yeah.
true. Fair enough. But no, I think, regardless, I think it does somewhat go to show that, like, no, expecting somebody to Uber is not that crazy, especially when you are rich. Like, hey, we have one like car, and hey, we're gonna Uber everywhere else because we're rich. We can afford Uber prices. Um, Something I noticed, and this is, please, like, just, this is what I'm saying. Okay, between your Benjamin quote and, I mean, Joe, I agree with you to some extent that, like, yeah, there needs to be like more emphasis on the vow, but at the same time, like, well, even if they're like cheating on you, you shouldn't be able to break it off. Um, I think this is actually a question of, it seems like implicit in everything you're saying. You're sort of assuming that he doesn't have the right to stand up for himself here, right? Why doesn't he just, if he's rich, why doesn't he just buy another car, right? Even if she's being just a complete, psycho and not doing what she said. Well, he's rich enough. Why doesn't he do that? Why doesn't he get the meat and the grill stuff shipped to his house? Like, why doesn't he just like circumvent and dodge every conflict they have, when that might not actually be like the situation, when it might be she is just being like horrible. And part of it is, no, it's not about the fucking grill. It's not about the fucking meat. It's not about the fact. It's not about this. It's not about that. It's about, you're walking on me, and I'm fucking sick of it. Right? That could be this at the very least. So when I don't think it's a good point to just say, well, I mean, fuck. Like, why couldn't he have done this to resolve it? We don't know. We don't know the situation there. And I have been in situations where, like, yes, like, I'm up to here, and so I just, like, I leave. Like, that's what how I deal with it. I just get up and like leave, or I kick them out of my house. Like, I just don't want to deal with it. Um, but I've been to situations where, like, I'm not going to deal with you anymore. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Leave. And his response to that might be, well, I can't just tell you to fucking leave because you're my wife, and we've been to marriage counseling for a long time, and you're bringing up phrases that are triggering me. This is something that we're going to deal with now. I'm not going to let you walk on me.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you
Yes.
know when to address that is?
When you're alone in your backyard.
Oh, okay. Not when your fucking wife is 8 months goddamn
So
pregnant.
when they're pregnant, they can just do what they want?
Yes.
Is that
Yes,
okay?
because
All
they're
right.
carrying. No, hold on. I'm half memeing. I'm half not memeing. So when a human being is carrying your fucking progeny, the most important thing that you're gonna do on this fucking planet, then yeah, you give them a high degree of fucking latitude. And on top of that, you bear in mind that the fucking hormonal process of getting pregnant, having children, delivering children, and all that kind of stuff actually like fundamentally changes the person that you're married to. One of the things that I want to concede to that like some people were saying that I know to be true is that you can start married to one person and 5, 10 years down the fucking road, not just because of time, not just because of experience, not just because of work experience, not just because of relationships, but also because of you guys are nodding, but pregnancy and children and all of that kind of stuff, you can end up married to a completely different human being. So that is completely conceded, from my perspective. That being said, I think that there is a time of chaos and conflict that everybody recognizes, which is, pretty much coming up to the delivery, which I'm in right now, by the way. And there's a time, 6 months to a year down the road, once the baby has been breastfed for a while, they're maybe sleeping through the night, all that kind of stuff. And the objective at that time, during that like very sensitive and chaotic period, is not to solve your very complicated relationship issues based off of who's getting the fucking steaks and pellet stove. It's just to fucking survive. It's just to survive the day or the month or the 6 month period in order to get to a place where you guys can approach your shit sensibly. And I think that anybody who was like married and had a pregnant wife and they made it through that time, that would be their advice to somebody in that time period is, hey, it's gonna suck. It's gonna be rough. Don't try to solve all of your problems right then. Solve them at a time that's appropriate.
So this is
Cool.
reasonable.
That would have been great advice to give to him 3 years before the relationship was falling apart while they're
if we
in,
were
while
friends,
they're
if we were
divorcing
friends,
during
I would have
COVID.
given him this advice.
You should have. You should have. Right? But he doesn't like Warhammer 40K. He probably thinks it's degenerate or something.
Lactoid Bam Corey Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Lactoid.
That's look. This is like the most reasonable take I think I've heard. Which is, we're not saying he's like wrong, like in the sense of, yeah, she could have been terrible, right? We can't tell from the video, but regardless, we're
Women
going to
are
put an
often
incredibly high deference because, like, during pregnancy, we have these expectations of sacrifice for the well-being of the child. Like she should not be
And the
drinking, she
family.
should not be smoking, he should not be like, even if she's being terrible, like she should be like, he should be totally submissive and like waiting on her hand and knee, because ultimately we're not concerned about her being right, we're not concerned about him being right, we're just concerned about the well-being of the children. 100%. My question for you then is, let's say this video was like earlier, back, because they've been
Yeah.
married casually for a long time. Let's say this video was like 2 years earlier and she's not pregnant. Would
Oh,
you
call
agree
her
with
the
me?
C
Would you
word.
would you agree with me at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, well, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing we can pull from the video at this point.
Be like, listen, woman, you and I talked about this. You are not taking care of my children. You are not burying my progeny right now. You said that you would stick the medication up the dog's ass with or without gloves. You are going to do that shit. Or, we're going to have to seriously reconsider our relationship because I am doing 80% of the chores in this household and I am paying 100% of the bills. You agreed to 2 fucking chores and you cannot even follow up on these 2 fucking chores. It is a pain in my fucking ass and I'm sick of your shit. And every time I try to bring up the fact that you're not doing these 2 fucking chores, you throw it in my fucking face like I'm abusing you. Shut the fuck up and go stick medicine up the dog's ass, or else this is going to be a fucking problem.
Perfectly,
yeah, I'm okay with that.
perfectly reasonable as well. So the last thing I just want to just confirm then is, with the video we have now where she's pregnant, yes, it's true that he should not be at that point, because of the well-being of the children, he should not be doing what he did. But then like she should also not be, if there is context, which it seems like there is, she should not be engaging in that either.
But here's my thing. This is where I don't want to concede this. It seems like she was trying to disengage. So you could say
Okay.
that like she would, she tried to trigger him by saying X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I could see that as plausible or possible. But it was like, hey, you're fucking pissing me off. Give me the car. I'll be back in a few hours when I can look at you without fucking seeing red, which is an attempt to disengage.
Why couldn't she just take the Uber?
Okay, so I wanted to answer this because
Cool. She
actually,
might be on the right on that
no,
3-minute video, but maybe not
Nope,
a different.
This is a consideration that I want you to take. So I know that not everybody is paranoid about COVID, but my wife and I have been. We're vaxxed, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're also paranoid about pregnancy because we don't want her to miscarry. This woman, Mrs. Crowder, had a previous miscarriage and she had twins. So there was this was a high risk pregnancy. I don't think anybody has contested that. So the fear with exposing yourself to disease and all, like the Uber itself, the trip or whatever, I could cite statistics to my fucking wife about how safe it is. She's still going to do the internal math inside her head and say, this motherfucker is exposed to 40 to 50 people a fucking day, giving them rides and shit. How is it not even probable?
Same thing with the dog thing, right?
That they've been exposed to COVID or been exposed to the flu or exposed to whatever, and this will potentially fuck up my pregnancy. Now,
she never made that argument, for the record.
Well, she's a fucking woman. What you expect her to use
debate brave
logic
enough.
and reason? What the fuck? Like, fuck out of here.
Okay, all right. So let's move on. We got to go to Bam, Corey, and Joe.
Yeah, I think that whenever you're missing the point. Anyone who's like quoted statistics into this argument of like how they
pregnant woman.
the proper conclusions they should come to. Not even a pregnant woman. I don't know the statistics of Uber.
A woman.
Like my grandmother. My grandmother's not getting in an Uber. She's not getting in the car with somebody she doesn't know. And there's no statistical likelihood you could explain to her like, no, like she's not getting in the car with a stranger. Like it's just not gonna happen. So I don't think that that's like relevant of like, oh, she didn't consider the statistics of it. I think
it's a straw man of Elder's argument.
Something that to respond to something Elder said, actually, or maybe I'm me and Joe are a little bit apart, but closer than we think. Maybe it is a black thing, whatever kind of point said. I do believe that like marriage, like the title of marriage, we probably should prescribe like what we consider to be healthy as a society, like what this should look like. Like I think that there should be other models, like like before we had like gay marriage, there were like partnerships, like legal partnerships that came with their own like categories. Like I think that we should be able to map them on like tax benefits and things like that. But I think that if you're going to enter into specifically the category of marriage, even though we can't like, I'm not saying the Supreme Court should like legally mandate. I think it's okay to prescribe like, this is actually, if you're going to do this, like you should be prepared to be in it for the long haul. You should have these expectations of like, this is what a healthy marriage looks like. You should be prepared to communicate, prepared to de-escalate, prepared to, like, I think that we should as a society make prescriptions for things that we consider to be good. Like, I don't think we just say that like this is just whatever we want it to be, because we don't say that about parenting. We don't get to say that like, oh, like parenting means like not just feeding your kids, but also like being a present, like a present, like valuable asset to them, to their like mental development. Like,
Hold on.
someone doesn't get to say I fed them and I left them in a cage under the house. So he's like, well,
Literally
parents,
fences.
what people
Like
want them
the
to be.
entire plot of Fences.
Yeah, no. So I want to back up Bam real quick, Elder, because I think this is primarily addressed to you, and I felt the same way. Basically, like I'm okay within like the liberal framework of the state saying that like you can have whatever fucking crazy marriage, polyamorous, fucking Satan worshiping fucking bullshit that you want.
Thank you.
But that's the framework of the state. Whereas I think that we should have cultural pressure in which if we can evaluate models of behavior that we think are good versus bad, it's perfectly logical and good, I would say, to put cultural pressure on other people. So for instance, I'm going to tell every single one of you to not do heroin, okay? Don't do heroin.
Damn.
Heroin is awesome. It feels great.
But
But it's also high.
Starting to feel like doing heroin.
Get this dictator out of here.
It's
What if I wanna
highly
be Bobby-
addictive.
I mean,
It's
I was about to
highly
say,
addictive and it'll
Buddhism
fuck
fucked
up
up
your
as fuck.
life. So
Don't
don't
do
fucking
heroin.
do it. I'm imposing cultural pressure on you, and I have no problems with people doing that.
So Nancy was right then, huh? Just not just the right
Probably.
drugs.
Don't
Let's
do
Just
drugs.
say no. Yeah. I won
Let's-
dare. I have a dare medal. Okay.
Let's
say
go to Corey.
You could have just said you're a narc.
Yeah, easier. Corey, then Joe.
We worked with them.
Yeah. I want to attempt to address a couple points. Of like, yeah. So what was brought up earlier of like, so it might have been, let's say, spoken about in therapy of like, this phrasing, or like calling Stephen abusive might be a trigger for him, which that may very well be possible. And it is my understanding that they were in couple therapy for a while. And obviously, I have no idea what actually took place or what strategies were given.
Of course.
But even if that were the case, generally speaking, although totally don't know for sure, but generally speaking, even if that was like a known trigger that was spoken about, you would usually, typically, at least as I understand, there would be strategies given to them that were like, what do you do when you are triggered? Because it's usually they give like the kind of the worst case scenario or the alternative where like when things don't go according to plan, what do you do? And so like, yeah, I think he probably should have still have had strategies to cope with him being triggered. But maybe that actually wasn't spoken out during couple therapy. But what I do actually want to engage in is what Elder Drazi brought up when he was listing over his bullet points. And I want to understand better because I think if I remember correctly, one of the bullet points that you brought up was like vetting. And that like you can't really do any vetting because like I take your point, you can't do perfect vetting.
You can't wholly vet, yeah.
Yeah, but I would assume, or I could be wrong, but you can attempt to vet for things, as in like you might want to, let's say if you're concerned about physical abuse, like there are things that we know from the research of like warning signs of someone who's physically abusive. And like red flags. I don't know that I wouldn't want to advocate of like, yeah, you just can't vet, so you just gotta like roll the dice and hope it works out. Like there are things you can.
If that's how it came off, that's not what I meant.
Okay,
I just meant that like
I want to understand it better.
You can see the flags, but if there's no flags, then all of a sudden like the danger's just wholly underneath the ground, and that flag placer wasn't working that day. Like there's nothing you can do, or there might not have even been red flags to see, and they developed over time. That's kind of the point I'm getting at.
Give an example, perhaps.
Yeah, like my kid's mom I talked about, she was a very loving and considerate person, and she had a mentally handicapped aunt who lived with us, and she was always super nice for her and stuck up for her. Not long after we had our kid, and this like still to this day, she became like even mean to her, and I'm like, fucking stop. She's not doing anything to you. You're just berating this woman who's just the nicest person in the world for literally no fucking reason, because you're mad about like other shit, or maybe sometimes even no reason. Like this is not something that I can deal with on a day-to-day basis, trying to get somebody to be decent to the people around them at a baseline and not just like attack them. There was no way I could have saw that coming.
Okay. Yeah, so
Such an angel.
I'll stop, but just saying one thing of like, yeah, if you argue, like obviously I don't know for sure, and like this is not the the place to like air your personal relationships. But like, yeah, I am a little bit skeptical. Like, if you couldn't see that as a warning, so I have no idea of the length of your relationship and like what led up to it. But I would call that into question. Like, yeah, I just couldn't see the fact that they might be.
And for all we know, you
cheating.
were the asshole.
There are people that change, Corey. Come on.
Might have.
So
Well,
Corey,
yeah.
I
Your
want to
body
I want
changes
to
every
talk
20 years, right?
from a counseling perspective, right? Not that I've done a ton of it, and viewed a lot of it. That's what my education was in. But I stopped in grad school. But nevertheless, one of the things about counseling, especially couples therapy, is that like oftentimes you begin by identifying problems, and then later throughout the therapy you begin to build those skills that you're speaking about, right? And it's very very common that couples shop around looking for the appropriate therapist. They never find the right one, or they go to therapy and they're locking horns to such a degree that they don't get to that step of being able to create like healthy coping mechanisms and skills in that. And so
Absolutely.
what it appears to me, and this is obviously totally speculation, because again, anybody that's drawing too much out of a 3-minute fucking video and saying he or she acts a certain way is fucking hilariously stupid. But what it appears to me when I see that, and he says like this watch it thing, is it looks like it appears to be like a couple that has identified triggers, identified problems, but has not been able to communicate those problems well enough in therapy to begin to like have like the specific words they're supposed to say, or like when those things occur, like what does it trigger in a sit down, right? Like it looks like it was brought up in therapy that she uses this as a means of making him feel insecure or bad or guilt tripping her. But like they hadn't gotten to the point where, the kind of the famous example from Meet the Fockers, where like one of them is like muskrat, like, hey, this is a trigger. We have to talk about this, right? They haven't built those skills per se. And so he's bringing up something that's like, bitch, you're not supposed to do that. But like at the same time, they haven't found a healthy way to like actually deal with that.
So
Yeah.
I
before
think
we
it's
wrap
so
up,
lame that
before
they're
we
wrap up,
politically
hold on, real
latched
quick,
on to
real quick.
like
Sorry, Bam, please. Just real quick, because I want to come 85% your way, okay? 85% to Lactoid and Scott, okay? I don't even think I would give a fuck if this video came out and she wasn't pregnant. I actually don't think I would care, because I would literally say, he's a fucking asshole. Leave his ass. Like, you're putting yourself into this shitty situation by fucking hanging out with a dude who's treating you like shit. Like, fucking, what are you showing us the video for? Just leave.
Let's-
But the catch here is women, especially when they're like 8 months pregnant or whatever. She's obviously financially reliant on him. She's socially reliant on him. She's pregnant. She's about to deliver children. Those children are going to be financially reliant on him. And on top of that, just through virtue of giving birth to children that are his, they are now communally tied for the next 18 years. And so as a result, I think that warrants the higher degree of caution and criticism that I'm bringing to the table.
Let's go to Joe, because he was the last one on that list. I want to make sure he has space. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was charging up. I'm kind of curious on some stuff that Eldrazi said, because he took a few jabs, and it seems like, I don't know. So I
Wasn't
guess, like,
personal.
yeah, it's all good. It happens. I'm just kind of curious on like what you believe marriage to be, because maybe that's where we're not like lining up properly.
Oh, sure. I think that marriage is and should be an agreement between two people, and those two people get to define the parameters of that agreement wholly. Like not like HOL, but WHOLLY. It should be whatever these two people decide that this step is, and that's why I think it's just we're going to move our relationship forward in this kind of manner, and that's usually why we want to celebrate it with like a wedding or something like that. Some people don't even get the wedding though, but it's usually like if not an external ceremony, it's like an internal ceremony of two people making a strong agreement to one another. But to say that it must be this or it must be that, the only thing that it must be is getting that marriage certificate signed. Otherwise, you're not married by the law. And if we want to talk about just like other kinds of marriages that don't need the law, then that's fine too. But like, I think that like even when I'm talking about it should be individualized, I still mean that you're getting married in the eyes of the law.
Gotcha. What do you believe to be a legitimate marriage then? I'm saying legitimate marriage. What do you believe a marriage? How would you build a marriage that's sustainable? Or what do you think is a way that we can build marriages that are sustainable?
Oh, well, I am currently married, and my wife and I have been together for 10 years. We waited 7 years to get married. I think that it has to do with finding somebody that, like for me, and it could be different for a lot of other people, but finding somebody that you share goals with, that you can trust, and that you can rely on. I think that if you feel secure in those things, it's very, very easy for other things to fill in the gaps. That problems get to be solved really, really easily, comparatively, if you have those key features.
Gotcha.
But if things change and you lose those things, I think that it's worse than being with somebody that you don't have those features with. You're with somebody who's a constant reminder of the things that you used to have and don't, which is just going to cause turmoil anyways.
So I don't think we really disagree. So the kind of like, and maybe we can find where the hole is. Like for me, right? Like I believe marriage to be a vow that you co-determine your partner's, like each other's domestic life. So basically, you owe to your partner your creativity, your experience, your resources, in order to essentially figure it out. So why I set a parameter, and I guess like the idea of like just the parameter of like threat of violence internally, externally, and or death, is because I think people walk into marriages for reasons that are not sustainable long term. So, for example, like one that you could that some conservatives talk about, I'm not saying conservatives, I'm thinking more of like red pillars, is like the idea of child rearing, of that like you want to find a partner that is able to bear your children or bear biological children, right? And I think that using that as a singular aspect by itself as a way that you build your marriage upon, I don't think that's a sustainable thing, because I think that you need to build relationships and marriages beyond material things like love, money, child rearing, and stuff like that. I think like in the Crowder situation, we see an example that's possible that their marriage was built on faulty foundations that lead to external pressures causing problems internally, if that makes sense.
Sure, I don't disagree. Although I would say for myself, I think that money shouldn't. I would never consider money to be one of the aspects of a marriage.
A lot of
Classic
women
mistake.
believe otherwise.
It's a majority of how marriages fall apart is money issues.
Well, that's the thing where it's like if you build a relationship that is beyond money, then it shouldn't, like financial stressors shouldn't be the reason why the marriage like gets like falls apart. Or if you build it on things greater than money, greater than love, greater than child rearing, as the theory I described, and that's something that can make a marriage stay stable in a world that literally wants to kill you or could kill you.
I mean, sure, but like the most successful marriages statistically are arranged marriages that are culturally enforced. Right? You know what I mean? So like
States or
in the world.
Globally.
I'm trying to focus on the United States. I'm trying to speak on behalf of other countries I don't know shit about.
Yeah, I think that's a different thing entirely,
sure,
anyways.
But
Yeah.
right. But what I'm saying is like this idea of like
You're gonna keep
what a
going on the
marriage,
take, huh?
what a marriage is and isn't, and in terms of like our goals and stuff. I think like Elder, like I would have to side there. Like I understand what you're saying, Joe Lewis. That's what you want, and that's what you want for your community, and that's what you want for the people that you live around.
I
But
think
like
it's just more sustainable. Like
I'm right, but if we're looking at it from a purely numbers-based perspective, then like you should give up on that, and instead you should trust your parents to find a wife for you, and then they should demand what that wife would be for you, right? Like
my mom,
if we're talking about the most stable.
My mom got married to figure it out. She was married for over 50 years, got married at 15, and the only thing that separated them was cancer. In the
God damn, how old is your mom?
My mom was 89 when she passed away. Like this was in the face of marital infidelity. This was in the face of financial problems. This was in the face of all these other external problems. Like two wars, civil rights, war on drugs, all of that shit. But that led to them figuring it out. Like that's where it came. That's where my opinion on this comes from. Where it's like in the face of all of these stressors, my family figured it out, and that's what I think you.
Honestly, it's probably pretty similar. like regardless of what you're saying, both the culturally enforced one. I think you're probably describing a similar situation to arranged marriages.
We are
But again,
enforced.
my point for saying that is that I don't think Crowder, with his ideological leanings, found a partner that was able to fulfill what he believes a domestic life to be, and that was never properly articulated.
We're in bonus time here, so I just want to let you know, especially for Drazi, who's a newer individual, we're past the end date or end time here. So if you need to bounce, you can just like bounce out.
I gotta go soon, but
okay, but sure. So then, just so you know, anyway, Lactoid and Corey, yeah.
Can I respond to Joe before I dip? If you guys are okay with that, Lactoid, Corey?
Sure, go ahead.
Because I did promise my wife I'd be done at 11:30 and do stuff with her. I think to your mom's credit, she very, very much valued the idea of being married. It seems like her biggest value in evaluating marriage is being married. But for somebody like me, I would say that being each other's happiness and being each other's rock and being each other's like a guide through life is much more important to me than just staying together for the sake of being married. I understand that comes with a lot of benefits, especially for kids and things like that. But I think that if my wife and I weren't that for each other, our lives and our kids' lives would be worse. And I want us both, even if she's not with me, I want my wife to be happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the thing where it's like, I don't know who would disagree with this, but marriage allows for a particular type of freedom that nothing, like no other institution can guarantee you. It basically guarantees that someone will not abandon you by virtue of your actions. Like you're able to exercise your freedom in such a way where your exercising your freedom doesn't lead to the person leaving you. But the problem is like people don't really like build or think about it like that, where it's like, yeah, there's like certain agitations with being single, and that's like a real thing. Like for instance, the manosphere and red pillars get correct, like the agitations of the whatever you want to believe the market to be is enough that could like drive you down insanity, and marriage allows you to get out of that and have somebody that says like, hey, if you do X or Y, I'm not going to leave you. Now granted, there's parameters around that, like freedom doesn't say I get to do whatever I want, but I think people need to like create like and articulate the parameters in their relationships and in their marriages. I think that's what liberalism like was good in one aspect of like being able to say. Is that
you said vows earlier, and I take that very serious. When I made my vows to my ex-wife and she made her vows to me, I would bring up to her all the time leading up to our divorce, you're literally breaking our vows right now, okay? Like you're breaking our vows to each other. And that really freaked me out because that's like the highest order of promise I've ever made. And I held up my end and she was consistently violating her vows. And eventually it became too much. Like, I can't trust you to uphold our wedding vows. I can't trust you. Nothing. I don't know who you are in that respect because everything is a potential lie now. You can't even.
This is turning into a therapy session. I don't really know what to say here.
When I was saying like, I said this on my panel, and I think it was on ABE, of like the idea of like the liberalization of divorce, where it's like the liberalization of divorce led to people saying like, hey, if things get a little rocky, you just leave. And for me, that's not a big enough bar. Like, which is why for me, I set parameters of threat of violence. And
I don't know what is that where that noise is coming from, but
that's my roommate. I think he's playing League.
But I also
he's
love y'all. But I'm
far away too.
Okay.
I love y'all, but I'm getting old as fuck. So
But does all that make sense?
All right.
Like to kind of quote.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I just have a different view about marriage, which is why I encourage. I think we had that in Wix Discord too in text chat. I think that we should encourage everybody to fulfill their own definition of marriage.
Okay, come on. We got to wrap it up.
All right. All right. Well, I got to get out of here. Thanks, Prime, for inviting me. It was a lot of fun. And thank you, everybody, for letting me go through my bullet list. That was pretty fucking sick.
Be well.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for being here. And Counter, if you want to.
I don't need immediately dip, but I just like I want Joe and Elder Drazi to become best friends, to walk each other through their perspectives of relationships and marriage and smoke a bowl together and all that kind of stuff. I want them to do that on the open, So
yeah. Oh, that'd be great.
Well, the thing like I could tie it in was like kind of like.
Oh, come on! No, so we got to move on. We'll save it later. Dibby, you want to say something quickly?
I do need a dip immediately. So
Aw,
good to talk to
man.
you guys.
Love
Love
you,
you guys.
Doobie,
Doobie.
parasocially, even if
Yeah,
Taser
Yeah,
eats your
I'll
fucking
taste that.
guts.
Juby, come through in the open.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to come through in the open. Just gotta take care of some shit real quick. I'll be
Gotcha.
back.
All right. Lactoid and Corey, then maybe we'll move past this.
All right, I got two questions. We'll see if I can get through them. The first question I have, and this is actually to Joe's point here, in the situation in which you, let's say, are having kids, twins, or you have a kid, and we know, like statistically, very consistently, that single motherhood is not good for the well-being of a child. Is there maybe a little bit of an expectation that if there is children, if you're getting a divorce, that you should have to prove, you should have to demonstrate some reason why you're getting a divorce and why you're putting your children at a disadvantage?
Again, like my line here is on setting legal parameters on divorce, but I will say that like that's why you gotta like articulate these kind of things. Where like in the face of Crowder, right, where it's like we know the field of play, women can and will, because liberals gave that to us, leave you. So if you're fighting your partner in the middle of your patio, you gotta like that's the thing that like where I'm really sensitive about it. Where you just gotta assess that field. Sorry, what the fuck? You gotta assess that field of play of like this argument that I'm having with my pregnant wife about marital or wifely duties could lead to her leaving me. Does that make sense?
I mean, that makes sense, and I guess I can see that of like, well, I have to like try to avoid her leaving me, but ultimately, whoever's initiating the divorce, in my mind, if there's children involved, probably should have some kind of justification as to why they're again putting their children at a disadvantage.
Can I get a follow up here? Like, why is it that you recognize the logic that when the state intervenes on behalf of your own moral preferences, that it is better because of the unintended consequences and of the other issues that may or may not be present, that instead we use cultural enforcement, that we try and bring our community together, and we try and convince people to act voluntarily so that we can create a better society, but you do not apply this logic to the majority of state action within our governance. Like, why is marriage special and everything else we can be like we can have the state like invade our lives in?
I mean, that's a longer answer, but in
And
the
words are
short
less.
of it, we recognize that like if we believe something to be a right, then it's everybody else's duty to honor that right. And for certain literal certain individuals of people, the state had to give rights to people. So like some rights just existed naturally as they occurred in society, and some we had to literally give to people, like women, black people, etc.
Yeah, that doesn't answer anything, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does, unless you want to walk me through what you're not understanding.
I don't think you need to be walked through. I'm talking about like state intervention in laws, in traffic laws, in like where people can smoke. All of these things that we look at from a consequentialist perspective, and you have preferred outcomes that you want to see done. And so you say it is best that the state get involved in individuals' lives all of these little laws, be they big laws or large laws, like how we need, like I want this to happen in the healthcare industry, so these laws and regulations need to be imposed, despite the fact that you have individual preferences, you recognize others do. But in marriage, you believe there's one right answer. You believe that it should be done a specific way, at least in many senses, right? And you say, well, that I don't want the state involved because there might be unintended consequences or it might not be right for everybody. Like, why is marriage special?
Because marriage is freedom. Marriage is freedom from abandonment. That like it's the only thing that we have, and unless you can walk me through something in society that isn't, it's the only thing that we can go into with another individual that creates freedom, which is freedom from abandonment. And we should take that freedom from abandonment seriously. Like if we're trying to build healthy societies and healthy cultures, like which is why like I'm of the stance like if my partner cheats on me and I'm married, I married her, so figure it out. Like that's not a justifiable reason for divorce for me. I'm not going to impose on other people, like, because everybody treats violence differently. So some people might treat intermarital affairs as violence, and that's their right to do so.
Let's go.
All right, so I'm not going to get an answer. All right.
I mean,
let's go. Lactoid, you had another point, and then we'll go to Corey.
Well,
And we'll.
well, I mean, I asked a question that nobody answered, but maybe okay, that's fine. People didn't
I
want to
mean,
answer that
like,
one.
can you word it a different way? Maybe I can.
Sure. My question's like very like, okay, we have a situation in which there's a child involved, excluding our concerns with like the parents with the marriage, right? Who cares? For the well-being of the child, right? Wouldn't it make sense, like maybe strongly culturally, where like, hey, you're initiating a divorce and there's a child involved. We know that this puts the child at a disadvantage. Why would you do this? Like, shouldn't you have to justify that? To me, that kind of makes
No,
sense.
I'll answer.
You should. I mean, you should justify it, but that justification should not like we recognize the field of play, right? Like the field of play is a woman can leave you and take half your shit, if not more. So like if you are in a relationship and you're in a relationship with children, you gotta like put that into how you move and how you co-determine each other's domestic life because that's a variable. And that's a variable that you're going to have to take seriously. No different than you're going to take seriously the marriage. And maybe that's a dodge. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure any divorce hearing like involving children does like literally you justify it. Like that it seems like that's how custody hearings go. Like you're not gonna say like, oh, I'm taking all his money and I'm moving in with better looking guy and
you
like,
could do that. Yes, you could do that.
I don't think
yes,
he's got a big
hypothetically, but
not
we're no longer dealing.
There's no there's no fault divorce in this country. Not
right.
hypothetically.
Yeah.
You could literally be
no,
like,
but we're not talking about divorce. We're talking about. I'm saying, but you're talking about it in regards to children. So I'm saying,
yeah. So
like
so divorce, right? So if you've got a child at home and there's two parents, right? And then let's use like the least charitable example ever, where she's like, yeah, I met this other guy. He's got a bigger schlong, and I just want to get with him. Sorry, right? And then I'm gonna like get divorced, and we're gonna like separate, right?
You're acting like judges aren't humans. Like do you
think that's
like
fair?
A custody hearing, that's
it's not fair.
I think you probably lose your kid.
Yeah,
no, you're not gonna. No. You're not gonna lose your kid.
You think if you say that in the court of law,
you're not gonna say that. You're gonna say irreconcilable. I have irreconcilable differences. That's what you're gonna say. That's what everybody always fucking says. That's what you say.
So that's just
and they're gonna determine some
differences. That other dude's dick.
Yeah, and then they're going to determine some kind of like
the difference is 5 inches.
But didn't you just? But
big
saying, like,
difference.
You saying like you're walking into answering your own question. You ask like, shouldn't you have to justify it? And then they say like, yeah, you do have to justify it. And then you're saying, well, yeah, they're going to say irreconcilable. Oh
yeah,
God.
So irreconcilable differences. What if we got rid of that reason for if there's a kid?
Then that would lead to violence in other ways.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't that be a reason? Why can't you have differences that can't be reconciled? Why would you remove that?
Because I don't. So you could have situation. You could have situation. I agree that you could have some like unintended consequences there, for sure. But like, and I'm not even proposing this be a law necessarily. I'm more thinking about like maybe like a strong cultural like prohibition. But like one of the issues I'm running into is, most of the time you're going to say like, well, maybe it's because of this, maybe it's because of that. That could be true, but like there's also a significant amount of time where like they just don't get along anymore, or the neighbor looks hotter, or wow, he's banging the secretary, right? That shit happens a lot, and and then you're gonna like your kid now doesn't have like a stable family because of that.
Well, no, it's not going to be because of that. It's going to be because of the things you tell the judge when you go to custody hearings.
I mean, I've talked to. I mean, this is where Elder draws you.
Like you keep asking, you're saying that like why? Like you're
I'm talking about separation generally. Okay, so we agree that like if you got a kid, it is best to have a household with two parents in it, right? Just that's the evidence, at least what I've seen.
And if you can't, then you're gonna have to use resources to figure it out.
Right, but it's still going to be the kid's still going to be at a disadvantage if one parent's over here and one parent's over there.
Not necessarily.
No, statistically, necessarily, yes.
Let's not fight that fight. Let's not fight. That's going to take a while.
I got graphs.
I'll just say sure.
I got graphs up the ass.
That's why I think marriage is serious. But if it does end, it ends like there's
simple example, right? Let's say Crowder's wife takes everything. I think considering however the argument of parenting goes, probably fair for her to take a lot of shit. Like, especially considering that, like, if she has this argument that Crowder is potentially a threat of violence, whether it be to herself or to her children, internally and externally, then it's probably fair to her to take a lot of money to make sure that she can be able to maintain and sustain their children's lives.
No, I'm not talking. Okay, I'm not talking about. So, and this is this is going to be like a data
Lactoid.
argument. But there's like
Lactoid.
data
This
that
is silly.
demonstrates. Wait. I have to finish this because there's multiple misunderstandings. There's data to suggest that even like people of lower socioeconomic status, like if you're like middle class or poor, if you have a 2-parent household, your outcomes are better than wealthier families with a 1-parent household, right?
I don't know.
This
That's
is
true. That
this
data
is silly,
is
and this is
inconclusive
why.
at best.
Hold on, pause.
No, that
this
is not
this is
inclusive.
That data
this
is
is
very
hold on.
inconclusive.
No,
I've
no,
seen
no, no.
like 6
It's
studies
not.
related
It's
to
not.
this because
No, no.
I used to
It's
fight
not.
your argument.
No, no, no. It's not.
Yes,
It's not
there is.
inconclusive.
There
The data
is
that
inconclusive
no,
on class.
no.
The
Stop.
manosphere
Let me
even agrees
hush.
with this shit.
So,
oh Lord.
Listen. Yes, it is better to have a 2-parent household.
It's not true.
Yes.
I'm not gonna let you
Listen.
say it. I'm
Shut
not even
up.
gonna let you
It's
say
not
it.
Shut
true.
I
up.
just can't.
Yes, you
Because
are
you're
going to let
saying-
me
you're
say it.
lying.
I'm not
That's
lying.
not that data is
I'm not.
inconclusive.
You're not.
When you
It is
control
not
for class,
inconclusive.
for, 2 parents in poverty,
That
in a
is
2-parent
not
household, there's no
Yes, the
conclusive data that
differences.
says that they do better
The
than 1-parent
differences.
households that are
That
millionaires.
is bullshit.
That's not true.
That is bullshit.
That data's
That
not
is
solved.
bullshit. So, anyways.
Show me
So,
one
anyways.
stat that says that.
So, anyways, I'm not going through this with you right now. It's like
You're lying.
common fucking knowledge that it's in textbooks,
just
in
lying,
fucking
man, but it's
in
cool.
psych
Keep 'em
in like
cooked.
basic psychology undergrad, and like just stop.
Basic psychology.
Nevertheless,
undergrad. All right.
Nevertheless, the problem with using this idea of should we get rid of no fault divorce, right, is that many of the circumstances change them because you change what the institution of marriage means. Because now if you get rid of no fault divorce, people are now less likely to get married unless they're really committed to it. So you might have less people, you might have more children born out of wedlock, for example. And in the reverse, right, because of this idea of no fault divorce, there are people that are potentially getting divorced that may be abusive or whatever, right, towards each other or their families. But by making it more difficult, you might force toxic relationships to stay together that might not have stayed together had no fault divorce not been present at the time. So we can't really say that this future action of central planning will have the positive outcome that we desire, because the data currently shows that individuals that are together tend to be better for the children than single parent households.
Right. I get that.
Unless you
argument.
account for class.
So
And even if I were to
I
yield
get that
The
argument,
differences do
Scott.
not disappear completely when you account for socioeconomic status. They just don't.
So I just
Anyway.
posted something. It's less than half. Scott, I understand what you're saying when you say like, well, you're already automatically controlling for a group of people that don't get along, and people who don't get along probably are going to make the best parents. I get that, and so that's probably a good argument. I would like to see how that actually plays out in the data.
Yeah,
but
we would have to do an unethical study, which is get rid of no fault divorce to really know.
Sure. I mean, look, I want to know because ultimately we're looking at like we're trying to figure out what's best for kids. I'm just saying. But
I want to
like,
experiment to see if it turns out better.
At the very least, though, it would make sense to me that like, yeah, if you're constantly fighting in front of the kids, if it's clear that like it's causing a lot of like disruption and trauma for the children, like we could have like maybe like a cultural like pass for situations like that. But I'm more talking about situations where, for the best example I can think of is I know a married couple who they just don't love each other anymore, and so but
they stay together,
and so they stay together, and like literally like the weekends, like, oh, he's going on a camping trip, no, he's going to like cheat or not.
Some people can co-parent in those situations. Some people can't. The problem is that I don't need to prove that it statistically on the out end is better in one direction or the other, because I'm not a fucking consequentialist. I care about freedom and human rights. So all I need to prove is that at least one person, one family would be more abusive or toxic, and you wanted the state to stop them from splitting apart so that child could be abused.
So let Lactoid finish, and I do got to get to Corey because he's been waiting.
I don't know. So it's just a suggestion. I've been talking a lot about like it is also a contract, right? So, and I think the state does have room to enforce contracts that are voluntarily made by adults. So I don't think it's like super statist to say, hey, you both agree to this contract where you're gonna have to try to make it work pretty fucking hard if you have a kid because you signed up to do this, and having a kid is like really important. And making sure the kid is raised properly is really important.
You don't get
But
to
like
enslave
even
people in a
even if
contract.
we
You only get to
even
make them pay restitution. If people
Okay,
want
this
out
is
of a
why-
contract, you
even
don't get to
even
enslave them to a bad marriage.
But
even
That's not
even
how
if
that
we
works.
even
Blacktoid, this is why I think the
even
vows are serious. Like,
yeah,
sorry, go
Joe.
for it.
Well, I'm about to agree with you because,
Yeah.
like, in some ways, right? Because I don't even want to like talk about that. I mean, that enforcement of contract part. Courts can enforce specific performance. You can make people do things according to a contract. That's perfectly legal, and to me, it
Yeah,
actually
they get
makes
to
sense.
kick down people's doors because it's supposedly they're
Sure.
selling too much weed. Like,
boy,
I don't give a fuck. I'm talking about whether or not
we
it's
gotta move on. We gotta move on.
justified.
So Lactoid, land this quick, and then we're running to Corey.
Okay. But even if we leave that part aside, because Scott's going to have an issue with that, I think it's perfectly fine to, under Joe's prescription here, maybe like I'll go halfway with Joe and say I want to prescribe it very strong. Don't get divorced, whatever, like as much as you can. If you have a kid, if you don't have a kid, I don't give a fuck what you do.
Okay, Corey.
Statist.
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief. But so to address to attempt to address Lactoid's point and maybe like try to bring in something so when you're talking about single parent households and the outcome of children in single parent households, and then the outcomes being generally worse. And I take your point that income doesn't count for everything, although the source that you post in the Discord, I don't know where it's from, but it doesn't seem to be coming from an actual like research article, just like some random article from what I can tell from that excerpt. But what we do know,
I'll link it.
but what we do know is like if you look at child outcomes in let's say different countries, let's say for example some European countries that provide more support to single parent households.
We
Oh
lost
no,
somebody.
Corey. Yeah, we can't hear you. Corey.
Yeah,
Can you hear us? Corey. Oh my God.
He is on a
Corey.
roll
Corey.
right now.
Corey.
He just
He on
dropped
Corey,
out of
we
Discord.
can't hear you.
Oh,
He's
okay,
out. He dropped out of Discord. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Prime, are
I
we
thought
rolling
my
till
audio was
midnight?
fucked for a second. I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
Prime, are we
hopefully-
rolling till midnight or what are we rolling till?
I just want to get Corey a chance, and then to get his point. Then we're done.
Okay.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right.
because
Just
he's
checking
been
in. I'm
waiting.
just old as fuck. That's all.
I'm
Sure,
intermittent.
sure.
I'm intermittent fasting. I've got like until 12:30
I
to eat.
can't believe
Corey.
Corey got cut out after I waited
Yeah,
all that time.
I know we're waiting all the time. Corey, we're sorry. Like soon after you started, you dropped out of Discord. So if you could start over again, honestly.
Can you not
Corey.
hear us now? You still can't
Corey.
hear us.
Oh my
He
God.
can't hear us. Oh no.
Oh no, Corey. Oh,
So unfair.
This is all Lactoid's fault.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I hear you,
I have
Corey.
no idea what
Yeah.
happened.
If you could start all over again, basically. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't. I think I had my hands like off my PC, so I don't know what happened. Anyways, I apologize. But yeah, what I was saying is like so. Lactoid, I take your point that outcomes from single parent households generally worse. But if you look at other countries, you can see from the data from other countries that the outcomes from single parent, the outcomes of children from single parent households is a modifiable factor. As in, you have better outcomes in, let's say, some European countries that provide more support, especially more financial support and more resources. So it's not a foregone conclusion that outcomes of children in single parent households is just like worse, and it's like always worst case scenario.
All else being equal, though, right? It is worse.
No, like it's a modifiable factor. We don't exactly know for sure in terms of like what are the things that we can do to improve to get the outcomes better. But they vary across based off of the resources provided to the single parent households. As in, we know that providing more resources to the single parent households, you can improve outcomes.
I'm not doubting that, but what I'm
Okay.
saying is that like all else being equal, like you have two families, one of the single parent households getting the exact same amount of government aid as a two parent household. The two parent household does better like every time.
Sure, if everything else is equal economically, but that's what I'm saying. Like the socioeconomics matter.
Corey.
Like, it's inconclusive. But like if you're two parents and you're like living in like low income housing, like it's better than other kids in low income housing. But it's inconclusive that like a kid that's growing up in like a 6-figure single parent home, like the data is not going to say that like that child's more likely to do worse.
Maybe not for like a 6-figure home, but like if you're like you can there's a range of like you can be this much wealthier and still be worse off if you're in a single parent household.
Are you saying, let's say, the children of, for example, Angelina Jolie are just like overall just like worse than like the dual
yeah,
the,
for
the
other
double what are the other reasons?
I think
I don't want to say. Yeah. It's
yeah.
impossible to say. Yeah, just a random.
Rough and tumble play for one. When you remove fathers from the household and children don't get rough and tumble play,
I don't want to address that. But okay,
of course you don't.
Well, I'm happy to, but like I think that's going to extend the panel way longer.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I strongly disagree. That's my position. If you want to talk about it later on, that's fine. To address Joe's point, in terms of like the seriousness of marriage and vows, I take the point that maybe might be some evolution when it comes to how people perceive marriage. And maybe some people taking it less seriously. This is an anecdote from my own personal family of like what is a successful marriage. I think that is changing over time. From some sequent generations, where on paper my grandfather had a successful marriage from till death do us part, as in the marriage ended when my grandfather died. But all throughout their marriage, they lived in separate houses because they couldn't stand each other. My grandmother pumped out a bunch of children for my grandfather, and I think my grandmother had a lot of resentment held towards my grandfather, who was not a nice person, or I'd say even a good person. But if I described it like, my grandfather died and the marriage ended, successful. But I don't think my grandmother was all that happy or felt all that fulfilled in that marriage. And thus they maintained literally separate, not cute, separate houses side by side, literally an hour's drive away.
Oh, fuck. Sorry. So Joe, if you want to make a quick response, and then we got to go.
No.
We got to go.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, like this, my full marriage take is really complicated, and my full marriage take actually encapsulates different homes where like you have to like properly co-determine each other's domestic life, and one aspect of that I think is embracing that like certain traditions might not be compatible with your marriage.
Nope.
So,
I'm not going to say anything, but let me say this:
have 3 bedrooms, have one for yourself, one for your wife, one together, have sleepovers.
Okay. All right. So, to my audience, we're going to
diminish sorry, not to make it seem like I was diminishing what you said there, Corey. That was not my intent.
I absolutely, I know you well enough. It's not your intent.
Joe's a good guy. So thank you all for being here. To my audience, we're going to continue on to Open Walk On panel. So stick around for that. We'd love to have you. Where you can jump on the panel and engage with these topics or the topics if you like. So stick around for that. Hit that follow button if you haven't done so yet. If you've been enjoying this, this is great. I really like the response from all of you guys. Like you guys are really into these topics. So like it wasn't easy coming up with the topics today. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. Today was a harder one. But I'm really glad you guys glommed onto these. Yeah, and to everyone else, help us out by subbing to the channel, gifting bits or gifting subs or resubbing, all that good stuff. Shout out to Red on Thought I gifted 5 subs previously. I didn't get the shout out before. But yeah, thank you for supporting. If you have been supporting, if you haven't, do consider helping out the channel, getting our subs, getting our getting emotes, and getting app reviewing and all that good stuff. So thanks so much. I'm going to give an outro to all these great individuals who've stuck it out longer, even when they're like old dudes who are just barely struggling. Okay, yeah. Let's go to our friend Lactoid. Lactoid, thank you. This was great. I liked your perspective on these different topics.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Prime. This was interesting because I think, although the topics, I think you said you had some difficulty coming with the topics, but I think the topics did explore, I think, some interesting concepts such as masculinity and relationships and where all that fits in. So I think that was really cool. If you liked what I had to say, you could find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Scott. Legend has it you couldn't find him on various platforms. We've never been able to find out. Scientists have tried. We just haven't cracked this nut. Scott, thank you for being here, friend.
Hey, look, I mean, we did good tonight on Rumble. Rumble was fun. I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. You can find me pretty much everywhere: Rumble, YouTube, Twitch. You might see me in different places, so follow me everywhere. On Twitter, it's Liberty_Fabian. Just search for Fabian Liberty. But I'm currently suspended for calling groomers. that being said, don't let dumbass lefties language police you and be fucking super offended because somebody said fucking illegal immigrant about illegal immigrants. It's stupid. And in terms of this last discussion, I'm not going to have a final argument about that. I'll just say this to all of the young men out there. Get with someone that shares your goals. All right. So I'm going to give you a little secret. All right, boys. I'm going to give you a dating secret from someone that's been around for a little while. This is what you do. All right. You meet a girl. If you just want to fuck her, whatever, just fuck her. Like, but if you're looking for a wife, right? You're looking for a wife. That's what you're trying to do. Okay. That's your goal. Set up a dual date. Okay. And what you do is the first thing you do is you go to a Barnes and Noble, you go to a bookstore with a coffee shop. Take the girl to the coffee shop.
Still exists?
Shush. You take the girl to the coffee shop and you walk around the bookstore. All right. And then as you walk around the bookstore, you get to go to the marriage section. You get to go to the cooking section. You get to go to the political section. You get to go to the fantasy section. Find out if she's into your nerd shit. Find out what she wants in life. And you have all of the excuses to coincidentally bring it up. And if she doesn't match any of that shit, don't go on the second half of the date. All you did was bought coffee and you can get out. And if she has all the cool shit that you want, then go to dinner, go to a movie, go to a park, go to the festival, go do whatever you were going to do. But save yourself the money, just buy an expensive coffee and find out all the shit that you need to see if this person has the same goals as you. You can do it in 20 minutes if you just get coffee at a bookstore. There's my advice. It's an easy fucking date, boys.
I think I'm gonna fucking write that down, Scott. I think that's actually really
It's
good.
a cheat code because it's embarrassing to be like, you don't want to bring up kids on a first date, but if you just walk into the marriage section and be like, look at these crazy people, and you can be like, oh, look at this crazy Kama Sutra book, and you'd be like, oh, you're uncomfortable with that? Okay, cool, not kinky, check. All right, you know what I mean? Like, you can just keep moving on and figure it out what it is that you need. Very simple, very easy.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Seriously, that was actually really interesting. Let's go to my man Bam. Bam, thanks for coming on. Not your usual night on, but you came in and you had a great showing.
Thanks. I always do. I won. Dang, like bookstore. That seems like a. I'm
Very
not even
white.
mad at it. It doesn't sound like a terrible date, but it's just like, huh. It sounds
It's
like
just the first half.
It
It's
sounds
just
like a man who
it's
was
the testing
born-
ground. You go on a real date after that if she has the right answers, right? Like this is the
born,
feeler
like what,
phase.
early 80s?
What?
It just
You
does-
do,
it just-
bookstores still exist.
I'm
Stop.
sure I know they exist. It just doesn't seem like I imagine asking her you want to meet at a bookstore and then like
No, coffee
now
first.
I'm in
No,
the
you
mood.
go get
Scroll through
coffee.
Amazon together. You could do that too.
No, like what you do is you be like, let's
Let's
go
look
to
at the wish
this,
list.
let's go do this thing, maybe, but let's go give me coffee. Don't
Okay,
make this
you
harder
said-
than
you
it needs
said
to
you-
be.
You said you dated black girls. You did that with them?
Go to the Barnes and Noble.
I've dated
Nope.
black girls who like
At-
white guys. Very different type of black girl.
That is a different type of black girl. Fair
Oh
enough.
no, black girls of any stripe can read though, right? So like,
It's not about
Yeah,
reading.
that's what I was reading into that.
No. Oh, that is not the shot. It's
Ain't
not
nobody
about
saying
that.
nothing about reading,
It's a
dog.
type of date. Yeah, it's a different type of date. I don't know. Either way, teach on. Like I said, I respect it. Yeah, I think it was a interesting conversation. Again, I feel like the biggest failure of this all isn't like some like universal aspect of what marriage looks like. Mike was telling. I think it was just the idea of
True,
him telling
Casimir.
his own aspect of what marriage is supposed to look like. And I agree that he did look like he did look like he was whining. But the thing that gets me is people on the left like aren't even like coming at it from a principle position. They're like, oh, this is a time to take a shot at Steven Crowder. So they're like, oh, we're coming to her rescue. But I'm like, you understand that like they weren't married for no reason. She like once this is over, her politics are still her politics. Like if you little brown kids, if y'all want to come to her defense, she's still gonna kick you out of the country when the conversation's over. Like pat you on the head and like cut my grass and get out of my country. Like I don't understand that perspective. So I'm like, I think she also married the person that she thought she wanted and got what she got. Here's what it is.
Bam, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that because I want to say it as well. Like, but you said even better. Thank you.
Yo, let's go.
We're gonna go clockwise. Next, my man Corey. Corey, thank you so much. Thank you
Policy
for putting up
Walker,
with
the
all these
first
other-
one.
Once again, the kindest, most sympathetic, and most polite person on this panel, which puts you at a severe disadvantage with these assholes. But thank you for being around, buddy.
Well, I appreciate those words, very kind. But wait till you see my own ring light footage somewhere down the line.
Nice.
No, that's not. I'm confident that's never gonna happen. But what I'll say is I appreciate Connor's temporary glow up. That was great with the dog. And yeah, I also very much appreciate always being invited here. Always a pleasure. Great topics as usual. And definitely, I think, brought out a lot of passion. And if you like what I have to say or you hate it, both are equally valid. You can find me on Rumble, rumble.com. No, you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv, Corey Campbell84, and Twitter, Instagram, literally, it's Corey Campbell. Yeah, thanks again. Always grateful. And Joe, Connor, Bam, and Lactoid and Scott, always a pleasure, and love you, Pry.
Okay, love you too, friend.
You're my
Joe-
favorite commie.
I don't take that for granted at all.
the favorite, but commies equal Nazi.
I
So
know,
the favorite.
the favorite evil person. I
Okay.
still don't take it for granted.
All right. Okay. Joe Lewis, MVP for a reason. Joe Lewis, thank you for coming through. Again, you've always complicated these things in so many interesting ways. So thanks so much for being here, friend.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I mean, it's kind of nice that people are taking these conversations about relationships and marriage and stuff seriously. I was kind of getting bored with Manosphere and Red Pillars making arguments for people. So hopefully this continues and we can have better conversations about these things. Because yeah, like Manosphere's got a point. They just got to chill with the biological essentialism and start reading a few more books and maybe they'll get a little smarter. But either way, this was fun. Yeah, topics were pretty good. I was
Wow,
kind of
the
worried,
dig at
but they
Bam at
turned
the
out all
end.
right. It's cool.
Cool. From the MVP to the VIP. Counterpoints, thank you for being here. Counterpoints is practically my goddamn hero. I really appreciate you, friend. And look, and hey, buddy, like we are. I can't speak for everyone else. I am so excited for the growth of your family. Maybe by next week, you would have accomplished it. Your wife has finished her manufacturing operation, and you'll have your little bundle of joy. And we're gonna celebrate with you. If that happens by next week. But after that, then fuck it. I mean, we can't wait that long.
I agree with you.
Thank you so much, friend.
No, I not only do I agree with you, the game plan is to have the child, and I'm actually on paternity leave for the next several weeks, possibly a month and a half. So I will try to be on, and I will have a child here, while I'm painting miniatures and screaming at you guys, so that
Don't get that mixed up, please.
Yeah, getting the wife to sleep. And what I would say is Prime's a good dude. He's been holding down the Twitch and YouTube political scene for a long time. So support him with your dollary dues. And then when you're done supporting him with your dollary dues, come support me with your dollary dues when you get paid. That way I can enjoy the time off with my family. When it comes to subjects and what we talked about, I think that what we're really seeing is we're seeing a bunch of alternative media pundits coming of age with their own marriages and lives and divorces and all that kind of stuff. And we have to see whether or not their advice that they've been giving us, which come down to platitudes, whether or not those are actually practically applicable. And of course, the world is way more fucked up and weird and nuanced and shitty than the fucking axioms and very simple phrases that they give us. So I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with a certain degree of charitability and latitude and forgiveness and all that kind of shit. But not when you're constantly a fucking asshole to everyone all the fucking time. If you'll indulge me for another 20 seconds, I don't hate Steven Crowder because he's a fucking asshole alternative media pundit. I hate him because he went into a Home Depot parking lot and basically chased 50-year-old Mexican men, screaming that he was immigration. And I'm all for a controlled border and all that kind of shit, but I'm not for giving 50-year-old men heart attacks. And making them fear for their lives temporarily because they won't be able to provide for their families for shits and giggles just to jerk off and think that's fucking funny. So I basically, yeah. So I knew he was a fucking asshole since then,
And so this has kind of been a long time coming. So fuck him, call a spade, and you know, I hope he learns some important lessons. But I appreciate you guys. Parasocial love to all of you and yours, and thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks all for being here. Anywhere you might be watching, right? Even from Rumble.
Your
So
prop guy's holding down the Rumble politics space too now.
yeah. No, I'm glad that things are working out for us all here. But yeah, come down twitch.tv/prime kai in case you don't know about that. PRI. Oh, it says it on the screen here. Anyway, so we will continue on to an open walk on panel right after this. Anyone here can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion, my community. I know they appreciate you as much as I do. Have a good one.
Have a
Bye.
good one. Always a
Yeah,
pleasure.
Appreciate
take
you.
care. See ya.